Chapter 1768. As one of the heirs of the Zimmick family, but not the first in line, Wally Zimmick had very little contact with the Zimmick family from a very early age. He was known as the wanton son of the Zimmick family. He liked to live in the modern world and had very little contact with the younger generation of the major clans. His favorite things to do were to bask in the moonlight at 9 o'clock in the evening, watch the stage play adapted by the famous hero Kiraloya, and play cards. Yes, it was playing cards, a card game with a long history in the inhuman domain, where adventurers fought against evil dragons. This is yet another pleasant day. Mr. Wally stroked his mustache with satisfaction, but soon became dissatisfied. But why didn't I see my dear housekeeper Lisa in the morning of such a pleasant new day? Not only did he not see the housekeeper, but he also did not see the twin maids who were serving him. This made Mr. Wally's happy mood a little blemish, but it was already a very big thing. A blemish in his happy mood. This made Mr. Wally even feel anxious. Servant, servant, servant. The owner of the castle shouted 3 times in a row and even directly rang the bell in the room. After a while, the twin maids of the castle hurried in. "Servant, you forgot what you need to do today," Mr. Wally said expressionlessly at this time. The twin maids seemed to be able to see the unhappiness hidden under the calm eyes of the owner of the castle at this time. The maids suddenly trembled slightly and quickly said, "Dear Master Wally, Tina didn't forget what we need to do." "You're late," Mr. Wally snorted. "You made me perfect, but it has become imperfect just at the beginning of the day. Dear Master Wally, we're really sorry." The twin maids lowered their heads. "We were preparing things for the banquet, so we forgot the time. But please believe us, we came as soon as we heard the bell." "Banquet? What banquet?" Mr. Wally was stunned. "Why didn't I know?" Tiff quickly said, "Mr. Wally, this is a banquet for Miss Gonglina." At the same time, Tina quickly said, "Mr. Varley, this is a banquet for the monitoring team." After the twin maids finished speaking, they seemed to have noticed the difference in each other's words. So after looking at each other again, they said in unison, "Mr. Varley, this is a banquet for Miss Gonglina of the monitoring team." "Nonsense," the owner of the castle said angrily. "Since when did Gonglina become a member of the supervision team? So, who is she inviting to this banquet?" Soon, however, the owner of the castle sighed and could not help rubbing between his brows. "I know, Lisa must have told you all that. He's acting up again today, isn't he?" The 2 maids gave him an affirmative answer. "He's seriously ill." Mr. Varley rubbed his forehead and asked, "How's the preparation for the banquet going?" "Almost ready," the twin maids quickly said. "Also, the food is ready." During the day, the bodyguards picked up a young man and woman at the foot of the mountain. Their car broke down on the road, and they're now guests in the castle. "Oh, a lost lamb," Mr. Varley said thoughtfully. "Sure enough, a perfect new day needs some unexpected surprises to decorate it. A banquet? In this case, let's hold this banquet. We can't let our butler's hard work go to waste." The twin maids stared at the owner of the castle with their eyes wide open. Mr. Varley paced back and forth at this time. "Well, prepare a familiar for me. I want to invite my sister Gonglina. She should be free at this time. By the way, the commissioner of the monitoring team was also a guest some time ago. He shouldn't have gone far. They're still waiting for my reply. Let's invite him too. In this way, there will be enough people to play cards and hold a banquet. Why don't you bring my familiar?" "As you wish, dear Master Varley." The twin maids lifted their skirts and nodded at this time, then walked out quickly. At this time, the owner of the castle walked in front of the mirror. This was a specially made mirror that could reflect the appearance of vampires. The owner of the castle had spent a lot of money to hire a high-level magician to specially create this thing. At this time, Mr. Varley took out a small comb from the cabinet next to the mirror. A perfect new day finally became perfect again, so he planned to start this perfect new day by taking care of his mustache. Perfect. Suddenly, the owner of the castle seemed to think of something. He pondered for a while, then opened the door of the balcony and walked to the balcony to look at the maze of flower walls in the castle courtyard. Mr. Varley chuckled at this time, took a piece of white paper, and wrote something casually. Then he folded the paper into a paper airplane and released it directly. The paper airplane drifted in the wind all the way and finally slowly fell into the cabin deep in a maze of flower walls. In human territory, the territory of the 13 families. Simish territory. As one of the successors of the Simish family, Miss Gonglina was now busy integrating the Simish family. Since the Grand Duke of the Simish family and the other Grand Dukes of the other families died mysteriously together, similar actions were basically performed in all the big families. Apart from the one in Toridu, Archduke Balegan, who had directly ascended to the top of the family with absolute authority from the beginning. What a lucky guy. He doesn't have so many troublesome things. The eldest daughter of the family, Gonglina, was currently sighing as she leaned against the railing. Of the 3 successors of the Zimic family, apart from the licentious Wally who didn't seem to care about power, the other one gave the eldest daughter quite a headache. According to the rumors, her brother, Marquis Bailey, frequently contacted the people of the Magician Association. It was said that she was a student of the first Tower Master of the association, a vampire girl who grew up in the modern world. This matter shook the entire 13 families from the beginning. The most powerful person in the inhuman territory, the student of the first Tower Master of the association, her noble status was not inferior compared to the other Grand Dukes. Therefore, Miss Gonglina was not surprised at all that her brother, who was a competitor, would be so enthusiastic. Not only this Marquis Bailey, many outstanding young people in the inhuman territory were now squeezing into the headquarters of the Magician Association at this time. Another lucky guy. Miss Gonglina's finger lightly touched the railing, and a trace of jealousy appeared in her heart. She had never seen this vampire girl before. They were all female vampires. Why was she so outstanding? She had never heard that the Tower Master of the Radiance Tower was fond of young vampires. Lady Gonglina, your letter. At this time, a maid in the big house quickly walked in at this time. It's a letter from Mr. Varley. Him? Miss Gonglina couldn't help but frown at this time. Why is he looking for me at this time? Although she was very confused, Miss Gonglina quickly opened the letter attached to the familiar. It was an invitation from the owner of the castle. The banquet is so fast? Miss Gonglina couldn't help but frown, and then she snorted coldly. How can an invitation be sent when the banquet is about to start? This useless brother is really messing around. Should we decline, Lady Gonglina? The maid couldn't help but ask tentatively. Decline. Wait, let me think. Miss Gonglina held the letter with her hands behind her back and paced back and forth on the balcony. Suddenly, she stopped and said, Prepare a dress for me. I want to attend Varley's banquet. The maid couldn't help but show a puzzled look. Miss Gonglina said indifferently, I want to become the Archduchess of Simish Empire, so I need more support. Varley is also a legitimate Archduchess. If he stands on my side, at least those old stubborn people will be more inclined to my side. Then, I'll go prepare it right away. The maid quickly nodded and said. Miss Gonglina leaned against the railing and looked into the distance alone. Then, she sighed sadly and muttered, I also want to be lucky. After the motorcade got off the airport highway, they officially entered the city. At this time, the Taoist seniors in the cars all quieted down a bit. They all felt the feeling of powerlessness at the same time. It was obvious that the Forbidden Grounds did not have an undeserved reputation, and it was true. Thus, in a short period of time, these senior experts of the Tao sect all moved away from the graceful girl beside them, and they became slightly uneasy. Even though they had already heard about it and were mentally prepared for it, it was still hard for these experts to accept that they would be no different from ordinary people after being sealed to such a degree. Hey, Taoist priest, why do you look so dry thin? Taoist priest, why did you stop small? Old sir, why is your hair? Well, in fact, what was hard to accept was that the sage-like appearance of these Taoist seniors suddenly disappeared. Without the support of the spiritual power, they were really old. They should be in a panic. Putting his hand out of the window back, Song Howren directly closed the window. Then he raised his hand and looked inside and out. He clenched his fist and sighed. I'm not used to this feeling of powerlessness. Are you okay? He looked at the masked woman sitting opposite him. the princess of the Qin kingdom who had just woken up. The princess's survival depended on that special bead, the marquee bead. At this time, Song Howren was worried whether the princess of the Qin kingdom would be affected in this forbidden land. At this time, the princess of the Qin kingdom was playing with the bead between her fingers and gently shook her head. I'm fine. Although I can't use my real power at all, the connection between the bead and me is not cut off. The power of the seal in this place vaguely gives me a strange feeling. What kind of feeling? Song Howren couldn't help but ask curiously. The princess of the Qin kingdom thought for a while and said, "It's a very gentle feeling. It doesn't seem to take the initiative to hurt people. Why don't I have this feeling?" Song Howren couldn't help but be surprised. The princess of the Qin kingdom said indifferently, "When you reach the oneness of heaven and men, although your power has skyrocketed because of Gong Sanhua, it's still far from that." Song Howren didn't care. He shrugged and said, "Thank you for your mercy, Your Highness. This is the most pleasant warning I've heard recently." Probably used to this guy's glib tongue, the princess of the Qin kingdom simply closed her eyes. Song Howren looked at the half-masked face of the princess with a smile, and suddenly asked with a smile, "Speaking of which, did your father ever think of marrying you off?" The princess suddenly opened her eyes, and a palm quietly slapped toward her. Song Howren, who had been prepared for this, chuckled at this time. He reached out and gently pinched, directly clasping the wrist of the princess of the Qin kingdom. "Your Highness, look at my practice of heaven-flipping hand. Since we've never used our real power, if we just compete with moves, extreme joy begets sorrow." The door suddenly opened, and then a figure directly rolled out of the carriage. He rolled on the ground several times before finally stopping. He stopped in front of a pair of straight legs wrapped in thin black socks, and there was also a pair of red high heels. "Song Howren, what are you doing?" The owner of the high heels lowered her head at this time. Her small mouth was slightly open, and her eyes were full of surprise. "Even if you admire me, you don't have to roll over here, right?" "Hi, Xiao Yinging. I haven't seen you for a few months, and you seem to have grown up again." The young master of the Song family laughed at this time. "Come, let Uncle hug you." Then the red high heels directly stepped on the back of the hand that had just clasped the wrist of the princess of the Qin kingdom. A scream was heard. Amidst the screams, the princess of the Qin kingdom slowly walked out of the carriage. At this time, the princess and the granddaughter of the Song family met each other's eyes. Song Ying couldn't help but blink, secretly thinking that Song Howren's taste was really complex. Where did he find such a country girl? This princess was wearing an inappropriate long shirt and trousers, and she was also wearing a veil that cost 10 yuan in the scenic area. She was really low class. This made the granddaughter of the Song family, who claimed to be a fashionable person, really unable to accept it. "This is Chu Yong, currently my private secretary." At this time, Song Howren had already stood up and tidied up his clothes, looking as bright as sunshine again. But after meeting the cold eyes of the princess of the Qin kingdom, the young master of the Song family immediately cowered, sighing, "Well, in fact, I'm her secretary." Seeing Song Howren's deflated look, Song Ying chuckled. She narrowed her eyes and walked towards Princess Chu Yong with a smile. Her voice was like an aureole. "Chu Yong, sister, right? I'm Song Ying, this guy's niece. Nice to meet you. Come, I've prepared everything. Let me show you this hotel, which has just been renovated." Princess Chu Yong looked at the arm that was suddenly held. After hesitating for a while, she seemed to acquiesce to this behavior and nodded gently. Song Howren walked up at this time with a licking face and suddenly laughed in Song Ying's ear. "Xiao Ying, why don't I see the other young master of the Song family? Did you two quarrel? Don't mention this damn head to me." The granddaughter of the Song family snorted coldly at this time. Maybe he's having fun with some slut somewhere now. All men are bad. The young master of the Song family was instantly overwhelmed by the aura of a defeated dog. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS 6184. Chapter 1769. Arrangements. Princess Chu Yong didn't stay long in the hotel of the Song family. She directly checked into a quiet suite. Because of Song Howren's strong request, his room was also arranged next to hers. Didn't you say that you won't touch me? Song Ying gave a very disdainful look. But this was still good. If there was really such a woman who could tie down Song Howren, her grandfather would probably laugh like a pig in his sleep. Song Howren waved his hand and said that he wanted to talk about business. What business? Song Ying didn't hesitate and sat upright. You mean this group of so-called Taoist experts? I don't think this group of people is serious at all. They're all old and indecent. They have been suppressed for too long in the past. Song Howren said indifferently. They are all people who have no hope in pursuing immortality. They have been cultivating their whole lives, but in the end, they still have no hope of immortality. I heard that the spiritual energy has started to recover, and some people's magic power has started to surge. But in the past, they have always been idle people who cultivated immortality. They simply don't have a realm that can match the surge of magic power. It's better to let them go. The president of the Taoist Association wants to simply throw this group of people into the mortal world to have a good experience. The funny thing is, many of these people are already people of the Grandmaster's generation, but in the end, they still have to cultivate from the beginning. Song Ying shook her head. She didn't really understand what Song Howren was talking about. Doing business in the mortal world was the scope of her knowledge. Anyway, it's fine as long as they have good food and a good place to stay. This is simple. I can even make this group of old people forget about home. I'm just afraid that their bodies won't be able to take it. Song Howren smiled casually, then said seriously, I've got the approval. What approval? Song Ying couldn't help but be startled. The approval for the land. Song Howren smiled and said, It's the land near our Song family's old house. The Song family can openly enter China. Really? Song Ying couldn't help but widen her eyes. During this period of time, she had only been making a small fuss. Although she had acquired several companies, it was only a small fuss. Although they had previously cooperated with Mr. House's A.O. Tong Pharmaceuticals, they thought that it could be a breakthrough. Unexpectedly, A.O. Tong Pharmaceuticals suddenly exploded, and as the owner, Mr. House, was currently missing, so the cooperation was basically over. I used a lot of favors. At this moment, Song Howren said lightly, last time after Mount Tai, a group of people from the Tao sect and the Demon Clan gave me a lot of plates. This time, I used about 1/5 of them to make this happen. However, it was worth it to let the Song family enter China. This way, the old man would be able to fulfill his wish. The other thing is, speaking of this, the eyes of Miss Sun of the Song family suddenly became sharp, and she said in a deep voice, You can go ahead and investigate who is behind the Song family, and then destroy the Song family, forcing them to flee overseas. Leave the investigation to me. However, Song Howren shook his head and said, What you need to do is to start transferring the core of the Song family back to the country as soon as possible. I'm afraid that the South American continent will become unsafe soon. Some forces can no longer be resisted by conventional secular forces. After this summit ends, I'll personally make a trip there and bring the old man back. All right, I'll listen to your arrangements. Song Ying nodded. Don't run around during this period of time. Song Howren thought for a while and said, With the emergence of transcendence, the world is constantly undergoing drastic changes. The whirlpools of the upper echelons are constantly surging with fatal undercurrents. I hope I can gain a firm foothold in the Tao Sect Association. Okay. Song Ying still nodded. At this moment, Song Howren seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked, Right, I heard that the old madam of the Zhang family lives here too. What do you want to do? Song Ying subconsciously frowned. Song Howren said casually, The Zhang family and the Song family have been working together to develop historical sites for so many years. However, as a junior, I've never had the chance to visit this legendary head of the Zhang family. In terms of etiquette, I'll find some time to pay her a visit. I'll go with you. Song Ying thought for a while and said, I've been getting along quite well with Ms. Zhang recently. Song Howren narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, How did you get along? Song Howren, you're courting death. High heels, high heels, 3 in a row. All right, let's get down to business. At this time, Song Howren hurriedly retreated and hurriedly said, "Prepare early tomorrow morning. Just you and I will go out on a trip. There is something urgent." "What is it?" Song Ying was startled. She knew that Song Howren's expression must be because of something important. Song Howren said softly, "The people of our Song family are buried here. It's been so many years. It's not right if we don't go and pay them a visit. This is the old master's idea." "You mean Luocchio's?" Song Ying opened her mouth and then nodded silently. "Okay, I'll arrange it now." With that, the granddaughter of the Song family hurriedly walked out. She was much more enthusiastic than arranging the accommodation for the seniors of the Taoist sect. "That's right, Xiao Ying. Tomorrow, say a few more nice words in front of the grave. Maybe my brother who died young will bless you from the underworld. I think our little Luo is a filial son. The red high heels were thrown to him." Song Howren chuckled and then reached out to catch them. Song Howren snorted in front of the door, and the door closed with a bang. Song Howren shook his head and put down the shoes. He turned around, opened the curtains of the hotel's upper floor, and looked at the city of the Forbidden Land, gently stroking the sun god badge on his chest. A transcendent descending into the world. How interesting. The young master of the Song family narrowed his eyes and murmured to himself, "I will create an environment that will allow the Song family to survive in this chaotic world. Everyone in the Song family must live better than others." At this time, a group of people came to the pet hospital. To be exact, it was a group of monsters in human form. The purpose of the Forbidden Land seemed to be to prohibit the use of transcendent powers, but not to make the lives of transcendent beings troublesome. At least, these monsters who had cultivated into human form didn't directly expose their true forms after entering the Forbidden Land. It was quite convenient for them to travel. Did this mean that the Forbidden Land had intelligence? Kelowna Shinryu couldn't help but complain. She didn't have any opinion about the Forbidden Land, not at all. The one who had an opinion about it was the guy who made the Forbidden Land. Kelowna Shinryu, who had just beaten up the Nordic diplomatic group and the jungle mystical warriors in the suburbs, was not in a good mood. Instead, when she came back home and was about to go online, a group of guys from the Monster Clan Association made things worse. "What? You want me to propose a proposal to divide the territory of the Monster Clan at the summit? And it would be best if the proposal was passed?" Long Shual widened her eyes, showing a caring look. "Do you know what you are talking about?" "We know very well, Lord Long. This is the consensus that we have reached after many days of internal discussion." Kelowna Shinryu didn't even bother to think about the name of the guy who spoke. It was probably someone from the White Tiger Clan. Anyway, since the young master of the White Tiger Clan, Huang Baimu, mysteriously disappeared, the White Tiger Clan was currently controlled by someone else. Long Shuo thought that it was better when Huang Baimu was in power, because she could directly communicate with Huang Baimu with her fists, unlike these guys who were still polite when they shouted and felt wronged. "No way. Stay where you are." Kelowna Shinryu was about to close the door and reject the guest. Speaking of which, Kelowna Shinryu didn't belong to the Monster Clan or the Human Clan. She belonged to the whole Kelowna. In the past, due to the lack of spirit chi, the Dao sect and the Demon Clan were at a disadvantage. This was especially so for the Demon Clan. The true dragon of the Divine Land only slightly protected the Demon Clan because of this. This seemed to have caused the Monster Clan to regard Kelowna Shinryu as their spiritual leader. Therefore, Kelowna Shinryu was called Lord Dragon King by the Monster Clan. It seemed that this title could pull Kelowna Shinryu into the Monster Clan's camp. However, Long Shuo herself never admitted this. "Lord Dragon King, this is a great opportunity." A group of big shots of the Monster Clan said righteously, "This must be the turning point of our Monster Clan's prosperity. Lord Dragon King, in this great moment of Monster Clan's revival, please don't leave us." It felt as if a group of uncles and grandmothers in the village had found out that Xiaolong's daughter had been admitted to a university, and then came over to say that after graduation, she should go back to her hometown more often and not let the fertile water flow to other people's fields. If she wanted to marry someone, she should marry someone from the village. Then, they didn't support the tuition fees at all. Bang! Longshaw directly responded like this. She closed the glass door of the pet hospital and pulled down the gate directly. However, a group of big shots of the monster clan seemed to be determined to succeed this time, so they simply asked their subordinates to set up tents in front of the pet hospital. Are you leaving or not? If you don't leave, I'll splash the water to wash my feet. The sound of cursing came from upstairs of the pet hospital. The water used to wash the feet of Shinryu. It must be the holy water with the breath of Shinryu. This is a great tonic. Why don't we thank Lord Dragon King for the reward? F***CK, so funny. Bah, you old bastards, don't you have any shame? No. Anyway, it was forbidden. Even if Kelowna and Shinryu beat people up, they wouldn't feel any pain. Even though Longshaw was used to seeing big scenes, she couldn't stand it at this time. She quickly closed the door and pulled up the curtain. The little butterfly monster was standing aside with a basin full of water. Sister Long, can we still splash the water? Splash your ass. Don't you see these old bastards? Forget it. Longshaw painfully held her forehead at this time, then angrily said, Profiteer, what kind of forbidden method is this? I'm so angry. Wait, why is there still one person here? With this, Longshaw couldn't help frowning. The group of old demons were indeed swept out of the door, but there was still a woman sitting quietly on a chair in the hospital. Black clothes and black skirt. It was the peerless snake monster with the bloodline of Empress Wa, Blackwater. Greetings, Lord Dragon King. Miss Blackwater stood up slowly, saluting with a soft voice. Longshaw couldn't get angry for a while. She couldn't help frowning. Why? Even you are like those guys outside, for the division of the monster's autonomous region. Lord Dragon King. Miss Blackwater knelt down slowly. Lord Dragon King, please provide a place for the children who have been displaced by the humans' development to live in peace. Lord Dragon King, with your influence in a human government, you should be able to do it. I don't mean to criticize you. Longshaw let out a sigh. It's you who don't understand. Do you really think the rejuvenation of aura is real? The aura in the world is limited. The total amount is constant. Now, the aura in Kelowna's earth veins is just a one-time release of the aura that has been stored for more than 2,000 years. In the end, they would still be exhausted. The so-called transcendents were probably just a flash in the pan. In today's world, human beings are the real protagonists. Will the monster's race perish eventually? Miss Blackwater raised her head, looking gloomy. It's up to the heavens, even if it's me. If Kelowna wants to kill me, it's the same. Longshaw said expressionlessly, the great Tao is heartless. If even Lord Dragon King can't stand on the side of the monster, who can? Miss Blackwater lowered her head absent-mindedly. Who can? Suddenly, a conversation from a long time ago appeared in Miss Blackwater's mind. It was a topic about the standpoint. That person's voice floated in her mind and couldn't be erased. It was as vivid as yesterday's words. She silently stood up, bowed again, and then turned to leave without saying a word. This was the door opened by the little butterfly monster. Seeing Miss Blackwater disappear in the back alley, the little butterfly couldn't help looking at Longshaw. Sister Long, why didn't you tell her that you're planning to? What's the plan? I saw it. Luo Dance whispered. The plan you secretly made on the computer. The proposal to publicize the existence of a monster race and the feasibility report of the coexistence between human and monster. Longshaw was silent for a moment, then sighed slowly. I can't put the false hope in front of them. I can't promise anything, nor can I promise anything. Looking at Longshaw, silently climbing upstairs, the little butterfly muttered to herself. If it's the boss, he must have a way, right? She missed the boss and Sister Yuyi. ####### PS. As usual. This chapter ends. Chapter 1770. It's almost time. In front of the mirror, Boss Luo stretched out his hand from behind and put a jewelry necklace around the maid's neck who had already put on the dress. The dress was prepared by the butler of the castle. It was surprisingly in line with Miss Maid's taste. As for the jewelry, It was obviously Miss Maid's private goods. It was 6:30 in the evening, just the right time to go out. In front of the door, Luaccio casually bent his arm, and Miss Maid naturally held it. The corridor in the west wing of the castle was still very quiet. It seemed that they were the only ones in the west wing at this moment. It was not clear whether the steward was too busy or too careless. He seemed to have forgotten that there were still 2 guests coming. On the way to the east wing of the castle, Boss Luo suddenly looked up at the bright moon. Tonight was the 15th or 16th. The moon was very full. Under the moonlight, he seemed to see a few small figures flying towards the castle. They looked like bats, and then they flashed by and finally landed in the depths of the castle. It seemed that it would be a lively night. Boss Luo said. Then he seemed to think of something. He turned his hand and saw a rolled-up map in his palm. This was the living map, specially made by Nan Xiaonan. Actually, we don't need it, right? Luaccio suddenly said, why don't we leave it and let someone who needs it get it, but we don't know who will get it. It was like putting a bottle of water in the desert. Who would get the hope of life from this bottle of water? And who would cry because of this bottle of water? It was unknown. Luaccio directly put the living map on the ground. With a smile on his face, he held his female companion and took advantage of the darkness of the night to step into the lights of the eastern wing of the ancient castle. Behind them, maybe because the material of this living map was too light, it began to roll when the wind blew. It didn't know where it rolled to. The paper plane slowly descended, circling a few times above the wooden hut in the depths of the maze before finally landing on the muddy ground in front of the hut. Mr. Gardner, who was eating dinner alone in front of the door, couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He looked at the paper airplane on the mud in front of him and suddenly became absent-minded. After a while, he had to stand up with difficulty and finally picked up the paper airplane and then opened it. He glanced at it several times. Mr. Gardner suddenly crumpled the paper into a ball and then threw it into the vigorous firewood to vent his anger. This was an order from the owner of the castle, Mr. Varley, to be on time at 7 o'clock. The banquet was going to be held in the castle. How could the gardener, who worked hard to take care of the courtyard every day, be absent at this time? The invitation was the owner of the castle's kindness to the servants. Mr. Gardner seemed to be crazy at this time and staggered into his cabin, which didn't allow people to step into the cabin. A huge battle axe and a long sword were hanging on the wall. Between the long sword and the battle axe, there was even a delicate wooden stick. Mr. Gardner quickly walked to the wall and reached out to take the long sword off the wall, pulling it out. The sharp cold light flashed. This was a sharp sword that could cut off hair. Gritting his teeth, Mr. Snaff suddenly roared. His long sword flew out along with his arm, and in just a moment, it directly broke the wooden table in the house. At this moment, the gardener did not turn his head. Holding his sword, he limped out of the little wooden house, out of the maze of flower walls, out of the courtyard in the east wing of the ancient castle, and into the middle of the ancient castle's east wing. The door of the banquet hall suddenly opened, accompanied by several sharp screams. Then 3 bats, 1 big and 2 small, flew into the banquet hall with the cold wind. They hovered several times above the chandelier in the banquet hall, and then slowly landed. The moment they landed, the bats turned into a whirlwind, and then 3 men in black cloaks appeared in front of everyone. The bodyguards in black who were in charge of tidying up the banquet hall looked calm at this time. Obviously, they had seen similar scenes many times. Strictly speaking, they were not vampires, but servants of vampires, but they also fed on fresh flesh. Ghouls, this was their true identity. Mr. Lisa, the butler of the castle, who was commanding the group of ghouls, also stopped his work and walked over quickly. He looked at the leader of the 3 guests, and after showing enough respect, he said slowly, Mr. Soar, thank you for coming. Please forgive me for not greeting you at the first time. Banquet? The vampire, named Mr. Soar, looked around and frowned. Wally said that he had something important to discuss with me, so I rushed over immediately. I didn't hear that there was going to be a banquet here. Where's Wally? Ask him to come out. Please wait a moment. I'll inform Mr. Wally right away. Mr. Lisa said indifferently. Dr. Gores, who was drinking alone, suddenly had a stomachache, He had a premonition that tonight's banquet was definitely not a visit from the supervision team. But he usually didn't care about these things, so now he just quietly acted as a spectator. Don't bother. At this time, at the stairs of the second floor of the banquet hall, Mr. Wally, who was dressed in a tight suit and even had a perfectly combed mustache, appeared with a smile. The twin maids were standing behind the owner of the castle. "Ha ha, COR, my good friend. Thank you for coming tonight. What a pleasant beginning of a new day." The owner of the castle opened his hands at this time, as if he wanted to give a warm hug, and quickly walked down the stairs. Behind Mr. Wally, the twin maids were carrying a flower basket and constantly sprinkling pink petals downstairs. Well, it was indeed sprinkling petals. "I've been thinking about how to welcome you in a nice way." Finally, Mr. Wally came to the three vampires of the supervision team and said with satisfaction, "Oh, this is a wonderful idea. My good friend, I hope you'll be in a good mood tonight." Okay, Simicai's loose woman." Mr. COR, the leader of the supervision team, shook his head. "Just tell me what you want from me. I don't have the leisure to attend a banquet with you here. Do you know that our activities in Britain have always been monitored by the Knights mechanism? It was not easy for us to get rid of the 12 Knights and come here." "Don't worry." Mr. Wally smiled at this time. "This is my fief, and I'm a knight personally conferred by the British royal family. No one will make things difficult for you here. Please rest assured." With that, Mr. Wally directly grabbed Mr. Cor's hand. "My good friend, you've worked hard along the way. Come. I've already asked people to prepare food and wine, and the beautiful Miss Gonglina will come later. I believe that her singing will definitely make you intoxicated." Mr. COR couldn't help but stop, frowning and saying, "You mean Gonglina? Your sister, the eldest daughter of the Simicai family, will also come tonight?" "Why would I lie to you, my friend?" Mr. Wally smiled at this time. "I think, with my face, my sister won't refuse. Let's just wait. She should appear soon." Mr. COR shook his head and said straightforwardly, "Wally, last time I came to find you, you gave me a cold shoulder. This time, you even called your sister over. What are you planning to do?" "Just to hold a banquet." Mr. Wally smiled at this time. "Do you need a reason to hold a banquet? This is a prayer to the goddess of happiness." Mr. COR obviously didn't believe it. In this sensitive period of internal strife within the 13 clans, if it wasn't for the supervision team to regain power, they would never privately contact with the heirs of these clans. This time, actually called Gonglina, it was said that the eldest daughter of the Simicai family was fiercely fighting with another son of the Simicai family for the family's power. At this time, Wally, the heir of the Simicai family, invited Gonglina. Could it be some kind of signal? For the time being, let's stay and see what this pair of siblings is planning. No need to greet us. We'll find a place to sit by ourselves. In the face of Mr. Wally's warm greeting, Mr. COR responded indifferently. Then he took his two subordinates and found a corner to sit down, right next to Dr. Gors. The family doctor of the castle gently raised his cup at this time, but didn't attract the attention of the several vampires of the supervision team. Dr. Gors didn't care either. After chuckling, he continued to eat the snacks on the table by himself. At this time, the side door of the banquet hall slowly opened, and the chef, Mr. Nelson, slowly walked in with a dining cart. Behind him, Tang Tianlin and enchantment, who had changed into a new set of chef's clothes, followed step by step with their heads lowered. Then, the two couldn't help but think in their hearts, "Why is this happening? Why is this happening?" They wanted to inquire about the situation inside the castle, and it would be best to get information about the owner of the castle, but obviously not in this way. At this time, the eyes of the people in the hall were focused on Mr. Nelson, Tang Tianlin, and Nan Xiaonan. This immediately made the two of them feel great pressure. The ghoul bodyguards opened their mouths at this time, wanting to say something. Obviously, there was no problem with their memory. They recognized these two people at a glance. Weren't they the two mercenaries who sent House here? As for why these two people became the chef's assistants, the ghoul bodyguards had 10,000 questions in their hearts at this time. It was just that everyone present had a much higher status than them, and Mr. Wally was the owner of everything, so they could only temporarily suppress their questions. "Huh, look who's here. It's Nelson, my best chef." Mr. Wally cheerfully said at this time. Look at what my chef has prepared for us. Of course, food. It was as if I could already smell that mouth-watering aroma. Then, Chef Nelson, may I ask who the two behind you are? The kitchen newcomers. The chef shrugged at this time and said at this time, Mr. Butler sent them here. Sir, I work very hard and often can't handle it alone, so I need 2 helpers. It doesn't matter. I like more people. Mr. Wally glanced at them casually and nodded, as if he didn't pay more attention. It will be lively when there are more people. Ah, only the beautiful Miss Gonglina is left. I really can't wait to see my beautiful sister. Well, it seems that another guest has arrived. The door of the banquet hall slowly opened at this time. Mr. Wally said with a smile at this time, what I like most is the feeling of anticipation at the moment when the door is about to open. Because you never know who is about to open the door and come in. It's full of mystery. Oh, it looks like this is the guest of the castle today, right? The twin maids were whispering something to the owner of the castle at this time. In front of the door, Boss Luo and Miss Maid walked in slowly hand in hand. They were not surrounded by the crowd, but met the eyes of the crowd at the same time. When she saw the arrival of Mr. Luo, Nan Xiaonan was not afraid at all. She even let out a sigh of relief, which made Tang Tianlin beside her couldn't help but feel suspicious. In the silence after the attention ceremony, Boss Luo smiled slightly and said, I think we should not be late. Excuse me, has the banquet started? No, of course not. Mr. Wally smiled at this time, walking towards them quickly. You two must be the guests during the day. I'm Wally Simic, the owner of this castle. The servants have already told me about you two. It's a really unfortunate day, but it doesn't matter. Your luck will come soon. Do you know why? Why? Boss Luo asked casually. Because this will be a night full of happiness and surprises. Mr. Wally opened his hands at this time. An unforgettable banquet. Bang, 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 bang. The sound of the gun salute. Ghoul bodyguards had climbed to the 2nd floor of the banquet hall at this time and saluted in the air one after another. At the same time, the lights in the banquet hall dimmed, and then the lights swayed, shining on Mr. Wally. His figure flashed and appeared on the stage of the banquet hall. The music was played. The beautiful twin maids didn't know whether it was appropriate or not, and even changed into bunny girl clothes, and then began to dance with Mr. Wally's singing. Well, it was quite normal at first. Then suddenly they started to sing. It was like the scene of a musical. Not to mention, Mr. Wally's singing was surprisingly. Did the owner of this castle stay in Ganji's country? In the bustling banquet hall, Tang Tianlin stared blankly at the suddenly lively banquet hall and couldn't help but fall into meditation. A carriage came through the swaying space and then appeared on the road leading to the castle on the mountainside. Soon, the old and gorgeous carriage stopped in front of the castle gate. Miss Gonglina, we've arrived at Mr. Wally's castle. The coachman opened the door of the carriage, and a pair of slender legs slowly stretched out. Thank you for your hard work. The beauty in the carriage smiled slightly at this time. At this moment, a night wind blew, and then something blew over the coachman's head, covering it. Miss Gonglina curiously picked up the thing that covered the coachman's head and opened it to take a look. This is a map? Hashtag PS 6284. Chapter 1771. The joyful singing came to an end when the door of the banquet hall opened again. But Mr. Varley was still flirtatious on the stage. Let me introduce the most outstanding guest tonight, Miss Gonglina. At this time, Mr. Varley dashed to the beautiful woman who had just opened the door and looked at everything in the banquet hall in a daze. In the last half of the dance, Mr. Varley even knelt on the ground and slid all the way to the beautiful woman. The eldest daughter of the Simisai family was startled, but she reacted quickly. Facing Mr. Varley's unusual way of introduction, she lifted her skirt with both hands and gave a slight salute. It was impeccable. At this moment, a round of applause rang out. The ghoul bodyguards. This was the emergency response from the signal given by the twin maids. I'm glad you're here, my sister. Mr. Varley hugged Miss Gonglina gently, whispering in her ear, May our friendship last forever. I saw the supervisor. Varley, what do you mean? Miss Gong Lina gently pushed him away, smiling calmly. Are you introducing me to a dance partner? If you want. Mr. Varley showed a thought-provoking smile, holding Miss Gong Lina's hand and walking to the center of the banquet hall, saying loudly, I hereby announce that tonight's banquet has officially begun. First, of course, we'll start with our delicious food. Chef Narson slowly pushed the dining cart to the front of the crowd. He gave them a look, and Tang Tianlin and Nan Xiaonan had no choice but to brace themselves under the gazes of the crowd. Step by step, they walked out of the dining cart and opened the lids one by one. They knew what these delicacies were. During the cooking, Tang Tianlin could still keep calm probably because of his profession. But during the cooking of the brain flour, Nan Xiaonan's face was pale all the time. She kept vomiting. Even the immortal realm experts from the other world had seen blood, so they only felt some physical discomfort. Oh, it's the blood fountain. I like this dish, really. Miss Gong Lina smiled. And my favorite brain flour. It seems like you've put in a lot of effort. Chef Nelson, thank you for your meticulous preparation tonight. The so-called blood fountain was a miniature, multi-tiered fountain filled with warm blood of just the right viscosity. The blood would slowly flow down and become active. Then, with a small stick or fork, the food would be picked up and dipped into the thick blood on the fountain and eaten. In fact, the way it was eaten was similar to chocolate or cheese hot pot. At this moment, the air was filled with the faint smell of blood. The strange blood fountain trays were carved with sinister and twisted human bodies. Vampires wouldn't suppress their instincts in front of fresh blood. Small, sharp fangs had already emerged from the lips of the various vampires. Under such circumstances, those who did not show these symptoms immediately became very conspicuous. At this time, Tang Tianlin was even prepared to break out of the encirclement at any time. But for some reason, these vampires did not seem to care about them. At this time, they had already started to share the food on the dining car. Of course, those bodyguards in black looked normal at this moment, but they more or less showed their yearning for the blood fountain. But Tang Tianlin found something strange. If he and Nan Xiaonan had somehow become the people of the ancient castle because of Mr. Butler, so they did not attract attention for the time being, then what about the two passengers who had broken down on the road during the day? At this moment, they seemed to have been forgotten. They were standing here, right in front of everyone. Even when Tang Tianlin's eyes met with Luocchio's, Boss Luo smiled and nodded. It's so strange. Those two guys. Tang Tianlin quietly said to Nan Xiaonan at this time, it seems that no one has noticed them. No, didn't you just notice? Nan Xiaonan shrugged at this time. Tang Tianlin was suddenly speechless. Nan Xiaonan was right. Didn't he notice it himself? The ones who didn't notice, it seemed to be this group of vampires. As such, while Tang Tianlin was still in doubt, the food on the dining car had been finished unknowingly. Actually, there wasn't much brain matter for one person. These vampires only ate a small portion each, and it was more or less enough. Mr. Varley wiped his lips at this time and smiled. This is just the appetizer. The main dish is still to come. With that, Mr. Varley clapped his hands directly. The chef, Mr. Nelson, understood and slowly walked to the corner of the banquet hall. He suddenly pulled down a rope that was hanging down. After that, the entire wall began to slowly descend. After it descended, there were actually many lattice rooms on the wall. One side of the lattice room was a glass curtain wall facing the banquet hall. In a lattice room, there were boys and girls wearing different clothes with different styles. Dear Sir, Miss, Mr. Cook slowly said at this time, this is tonight's main dish. I prepared the taste. Farm? Mr. COR of the monitoring team couldn't help but frown at this time. These are ancient humans? Varley, you actually hid ancient humans in your home and even made yourself a small farm? Oh, Suar, my good friend. Mr. Varley smiled at this time. Not every ancient human has their birth certificate. If they can't prove their origin, who will care about this? Mr. COR of the monitoring team was suddenly speechless. This kind of farm delicacy had always been enjoyed by the nobles of the big clans. It was an extremely luxurious enjoyment. But to the vampires in the monitoring team, they could only be bestowed with rewards if they made contributions. Most of the monitoring team members were from ordinary vampires or small families in the vampire world. Only a small number of them were collateral relatives of the 13 clans. At this time, Miss Gonglina's pair of beautiful eyes looked at the lattice room as if looking for a suitable prey. Recently, due to the revolution of ancient humans in the inhuman domain, many blood seeds began to be contaminated. In order to ensure the purity of the blood seeds, the clans had begun to clean up the large farms. However, the new batch of crops hadn't grown yet, causing the blood price to rise. Although the nobles could still barely maintain the supply, but this young lady of the Tsimish family had her own ideas. Therefore, in order to win the support of a large number of middle and lower class, she had begun to share the joys and sorrows of the middle and lower class. The most important thing was to use the blood that she had prepared. It seemed that she should come to this ancient castle more often. She had to raise a large number of subordinates, so her finances were quite tight. But Varley was different. As one of the heirs of the Tsimish family, he had never participated in the internal strife of the family. But after so many years, although the portion given to the heirs each year was not much, it was only used to raise this ancient castle, so there should be a large surplus. What a rich little brother. After thinking about this, Miss Gonglina suddenly felt that her luck was not bad today, although she didn't know the purpose of Varley inviting her here. But the vampire's pursuit of the ultimate blood came from the instinct. No vampire would resist when facing their instinct. Miss Tsimish fangs seemed to have become a little sharper because of this. Before we officially start the meal, let's play a game. Mr. Varley opened his hands at this time. As a show to liven things up, I've decided to give the winner of the game a treasure from my personal collection as a reward, and the winner will have the first right to choose food. Game? Miss Gonglina seemed to think of something at this time. She said with a strange expression, "Varley, don't tell me you want to play cards?" "Sure enough, you are my dear sister." Mr. Varley smiled at this time. "You really know me too well." Miss Gonglina couldn't help but sigh. There was a kind of realization in her heart. What should come will come after all. This was the reason why she didn't like to be a guest at Varley's house. This guy liked to drag others to play cards with him every time. No matter what he did, it would eventually become a game of cards, no matter who came. Vampires had no way to stop Varley from playing cards. "Mr. Varley, we didn't come here for—" Mr. Cor frowned at this time. The rumor that the libertine of the Tsimish family liked to play cards was spread in almost all the clans. It was rumored that Mr. Varley was even driven out by the Grand Duke of the Tsimish family because of playing cards. The reason was that when he played cards with the Grand Duke, he crushed the Grand Duke with a flying dragon. "Let's talk after the game." Mr. Varley glanced at the captain of the monitoring team at this time. Mr. Cor couldn't help but shudder at this glance. At this moment, he seemed to vaguely feel a murderous intent. It seems that everyone has no opinion. Mr. Varley smiled at this time. Then, he asked the twin maids to bring a box and put it in front of everyone. Then, he put a pair of numbered balls into the box. "Now, let's start to divide into groups." Mr. Varley smiled at this time. "2 people in a group, please. Everyone here, except for the bodyguards upstairs, come over and draw lots to be divided into groups." With that said, Mr. Varley was the first to reach into the box and pulled out a small ball with the number 9 written on it. "Number 9. Then, the person who draws 10 will be in a group with me, and so on. 1 and 2 will be in a group. Do you understand?" Miss Gonglina obviously played this game before. At this time, after Mr. Varley, she was the second to reach out to draw. Then, the housekeeper, the family doctor, and the twin maids walked over one by one. "Let's go and draw lots." Mr. Chef looked at Tang Tianlin and Nan Xiaonan at this time and said, We also want to draw lots." Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but frown. Mr. Nelson said indifferently, "Didn't you hear what the master said? Except for the bodyguards upstairs, of course. It includes you." With that, Mr. Nelson went straight to the box for drawing lots. Tang Tianlin and Nan Xiaonan looked at each other at this time and had to wait and see, following Mr. Nelson. At this time, Nan Xiaonan paid attention. She found that Mr. Luo had taken his female companion to the drawing box one step ahead of them. This guy, don't tell me he came here with the mentality of killing time. The immortal powerhouse of the other world couldn't help but mutter in his heart at this time. With doubts in her heart, Nan Xiaonan tried her best to see what number Mr. Luo had drawn. However, such a simple method of drawing lots was really effective for a group of inhuman beings. However, when she reached into the box, she understood that this box seemed to have the ability to isolate all perception, so what was drawn seemed to be completely random. Nan Xiaonan looked at her small ball. Number, what's yours? She subconsciously looked at Tang Tianlin. Tang Tianlin frowned at this time and released the small ball in his hand. The number on the ball was 11. Nan Xiaonan was startled and said, I just saw that Miss Gonglina's number is 12, so you... Tang Tianlin nodded silently and became silent. At this time, Miss Gonglina seemed to have noticed this and looked at Tang Tianlin with a hint of interest. Finally, it was the 3 vampires of the monitoring team. After they finished drawing lots, Mr. Varley asked the twin maids to pack up the box for drawing lots. After that, the butler, Mr. Lisa, held another wooden box in both hands and slowly walked out. After putting down the box, they opened it up and laid it out. Then, a 1M x 1M large chessboard appeared before everyone's eyes. There were many squares on the chessboard, seemingly for walking. In the middle of the chessboard, there was a golden die and a small box. Inside the box, there were many cards. The words, function card, were written on the box. Let's team up first. Mr. Varley raised the 9 ball in his hand at this time. Then, the person with the 10 ball, please come in front of me. So do the others. Everyone looked at each other, and finally, one of the 2 subordinates of COR of the monitoring team walked to Mr. Varley with some anxiety. The team formation began. Nan Xiaonan's eyebrows couldn't help but twitch at this time. She found that the person with the adjacent number was actually the butler of the castle. A feeling of being in trouble spontaneously arose. She could only sigh and walk to the butler as if she was appointed. At this time, she saw that Boss Luo and Miss Maid were still standing together. Their numbers were adjacent to each other. This immortal master of the other world suddenly laughed in her heart. Ha! You dare say you didn't cheat? There were a total of 7 groups. Nan Xiaonan and the butler of the castle were in a group. Tang Tianlin and Gong Lina, the eldest daughter of the Simisai family, were in a group. The owner of the castle and member of the monitoring team, they were in a group. As for the twin maids, they were unexpectedly divided into a group. The family doctor and the chef were in a group. Mr. COR and his other subordinate, B, were in a group. Finally, Boss Luo and Miss Maid were in a group. Mr. Varley looked around at this time, then smiled and said, Then, each group, please discuss the person who will throw the points, as well as the hero. I'll explain here, as the hero, you need to enter the chessboard and become the card we want to play. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. As usual. Chapter 1772. Rule 1. 2 players. Choose one to be the master of throwing points and the servant to participate in the game. The master and the servant can communicate with each other, but the master can't hear the conversation between other servants and their masters. Rule 2. The initial life of the servant in the chessboard is 100. The life value can be obtained, reduced, or increased through adventures. If the life value is 0, the loser will enter the punishment wheel and be rotated by the master. Rule 3. Every time a round a master throws points, each master can draw a function card from the function card group. In addition, function cards can also be obtained through treasure chests or by defeating other masters. Rule 4. The servant can get level up by knocking down monsters on the chessboard and can also get equipment bonus by digging treasure chests. Rule 4. Every time a round of throwing points ends, the servant's life must be reduced once, and the reduction value is reduced by the master's throwing points *10. Rule 5. You can team up with other masters. After the team fails, the other party can inherit all the resources. Finally, after all the opponents have been defeated, the master will challenge the keeper. Mr. Varley looked at everyone at this time and said the final condition. In a final battle, stop the master's right to throw points. If the battle doesn't start, escape. So, do you understand? Everyone was silent. Mr. Varley smiled and said, Then, each team, start to choose their respective master and servant. The game will officially start in 3 minutes. Please go to the chessboard and start the timer. Since the teams had already been formed, it was time for them to discuss. But what exactly were they going to discuss? If they knew each other, it would be fine, but for someone like her. Nan Xiaonan looked at the butler of the castle and was about to speak. But Lisa had already taken the lead and said, "Go be a servant." "Okay, discuss. What is there to discuss?" Nan Xiaonan sighed and then closed her eyes. Her fingers quietly drew in the air, and then the faint mark produced by the light instantly disappeared in the air. "Mr. Chef, don't tell me you intend to let a lady participate in such a violent game?" Miss Gong Lina looked at Tang Tianlin with a smile. He felt that it had already been set up, so he could only say, "I understand, Miss Gong Lina." "How gentlemanly." The eldest daughter of the Tsimus family smiled. "I hope you can bring me good luck." Tang Tianlin felt that his luck had never been good. "Oh, I want you can go." Chef Nelson looked at Dr. Gores, who lost to him after using rock, paper, scissors. He smiled and said, "I washed my hands today." "That's terrible." The family doctor sighed reluctantly. Tiff is the elder sister. Tina should listen to her elder sister and be her follower, right? Tina is the younger sister, right? Tiff should cherish her sister and protect Tina. Tina doesn't want to enter the chessboard, okay? After a debate, the twin maids drew lots, and Tiff got the right to vote. "Then let me go, Mr. Varley." In silence, member A of the monitoring team looked at Mr. Varley, who was in the same group as him, and took the initiative to make such a proposal. Then Mr. Varley directly agreed. He said that he was the master's follower every time. On the other side, member B also nervously walked out as Mr. Core's follower. He and member A looked at each other, which contained too many things. "Master, please use me well." "No, this time I'll let you use me well, okay." The terrible lines came from Boss Luo and Miss Maid. Boss Luo looked at the chessboard that marked different functions, different areas, and different ways of playing. He was actually quite interested in entering the chessboard. Miss Maid had no choice but to nod. How to say, maybe men like to play. The servants surrounded the chessboard at this time. Each of them reached out and touched the edge of the chessboard. Suddenly, the chessboard burst out a bright light. After that, the servants disappeared instantly, and there were 7 different cards on the chessboard. After that, the 7 follower cards were automatically stacked and flipped. Everything was messed up, and they were randomly assigned to the starting point of the chessboard, flipped open. At this time, the masters knew what kind of environment their servants were in, and only they could see the attributes of their servants. The initial attack power and defense power of the servants were random between 1-10. There was no profession. The profession needed to be obtained in the chessboard adventure. If the conditions were met, the servants could directly change their profession. "Oh, it seems that my luck is good. My servants' basic ability points are quite good." Mr. Varley smiled at this time and said, "Of course, it's just a basic ability. What you get in the adventure is the most important." Mr. COR of the monitoring team just casually glanced at the value of his servant and didn't care too much. He didn't even care about the game. He was only here to accompany Mr. Wally. If they couldn't reach an agreement on Wally's support for the monitoring organization, he would just leave. "I know, your luck is really bad." "Gores." The chef shook his head at this time. It seemed that the initial ability of Dr. Gores as a servant was not optimistic. The butler was expressionless. Miss Gong Lina still had that elegant face, and the twin maids stood quietly. Miss Maid was more elegant than Miss Gong Lina next to her. "So, let's start the game." Mr. Varley at this time waved his hand and directly grabbed the dice, then smiled and said, "Ladies first. The first one to roll, of course, is our beautiful Miss Gong Lina. I think everyone has no opinion, right?" He directly threw the dice in front of Miss Gong Lina. "Excuse me." Miss Gong Lina smiled at this time, casually glanced at the blonde standing next to her, and then picked up the dice. Just at the moment when she was about to roll, the door of the banquet hall suddenly opened. Because everyone was concentrating, the sound of the banquet hall's door opening was particularly loud. Then, an ugly hunchback with shabby clothes appeared in front of everyone in an instant. "Sneeve?" At this moment, The butler's memory clearly did not have any problems. He directly frowned and asked, "What are you doing here?" The gardener didn't respond at this time, limping to the front of the crowd. He looked at Miss Maid standing in front of the chessboard and frowned. It seemed that he was blaming her and Luaccio for not leaving before 6 o'clock in the evening. Mr. Sneeve quickly came to the chessboard and said in a deep voice, "I want to participate in this game." "Mr. Sneeve, this is not the place you should come." The butler said at this time, "You should go back to where you belong. I called him here." Mr. Varley stretched out his hand and stopped the butler from speaking. He said calmly, "Sneeve is also a member of the castle. He has the right to participate in the game. But unfortunately, you are late, Sneeve. There are not enough participants here to team up with you. Perhaps you can watch the game here as a spectator. I have a partner." Looking at Mr. Varley, the gardener's eyes even narrowed at this time, and then pointed with his hand, "I will participate as a servant. It is my bet." A dog barked. A black dog rushed out of the door at this time, then quickly ran to Mr. Sneeve and squatted down. "Varley, is this your servant?" Miss Gong Lina said indifferently at this time. "It seems that your lazy style has been passed on to your servants. Are you planning to let me play this game with a black dog?" Mr. Varley smiled at this time. "Sneeve, if you are willing to directly reduce the action point by 1 in each round and directly increase the life point by 1 in each round, I agree to let you participate in the game. How about it?" "I promise you." Mr. Sneeve gritted his teeth and said at this time, "So, Sister Gonglina, what do you think?" Mr. Varley smiled at Miss Gonglina at this time. His attitude was humble, even too humble. "Since this is the case, then I have no opinion." The eldest daughter of the TSI family shook her head at this time. It seemed that her dissolute brother had already planned to let this ugly gardener participate in the game. "Varley, what are you planning to do?" With this thought, Mr. Sneeve had already walked to the chessboard and reached out to touch the edge of the chessboard. In the next moment, he turned into a card and then directly landed on one of the starting points of the chessboard. Seeing this, Miss Gonglina was still the first person to throw her dice. She threw the golden die. Points 5. Good luck. The eldest daughter of the TSI family smiled at this time. "I didn't expect to get a treasure chest within 5 steps. In fact, I quite like playing this card game." When the eldest daughter laughed, the servant girl suddenly moved to the side. Not for anything else, but to prevent the powder on Miss Gonglina's face from falling and touching her when she laughed. Despise, despise, despise. He almost lost his consciousness in an instant, and then he woke up. When he woke up and opened his eyes, Tang Tianlin saw his situation clearly. In a dark forest, ancient, twisted trees covered everything. Tang Tianlin could even faintly hear the cries of wild beasts in the forest. This was the chessboard, the world inside the chessboard. In an instant, Tang Tianlin even had a trace of regret for agreeing to this game. He even felt that this trip to Britain was quite reckless from the beginning. Transcendent, transcendent. In the face of this mysterious, transcendent power, he suddenly felt that his mutated left arm was so small and insignificant. Attack power, 7. Defense power, 4. Vitality, 100. These were the attributes that appeared in his perception when he came to the world of the chessboard game. According to the initial maximum value of 10, such a start seemed to be neither good nor bad. Suddenly, Tang Tianlin received the command to act. So, his body began to run automatically without stopping. Tang Tianlin felt that it didn't take much time, but he had already run a considerable distance. At this time, his body automatically stopped at this time, and at the same time a 1-meter-high box appeared in front of him. As a newbie adventurer, you are lucky to encounter a box with a chance to produce treasures at the beginning of the adventure. Your master has chosen to open the treasure box. You have opened the treasure box and triggered the mechanism of the treasure box. You need to defeat the guardian beast of the treasure box to obtain the treasure. Fight, newbie adventurer. At this time, the explanation rang in Tang Tianlin's mind. Before he could digest it, he saw the treasure box in front of him suddenly show sharp teeth and then directly bite at him. Fight? Tang Tianlin was instantly pressed to the ground by the treasure box. His arm was tightly biting the treasure box. and then his vitality began to slowly decline. This kind of pain was obviously not imaginary. It was real. Tang Tianlin was shocked, and the potential in his body was stimulated. He directly opened the treasure box, then waved his fist at the treasure box. The numbers of -3, -3, -3 began to float from the top of the treasure box. Tang Tianlin glanced at the blood value of the treasure box again. 300. He suddenly felt despair. At the same time, Miss Gong Lina, who was next to the chessboard, didn't look very happy, but she quickly threw out the dice as if she didn't care. The dice slowly rolled to the front of Miss Maid. At this time, Miss Maid covered her palm with a handkerchief and then picked up the dice. 1 o'clock. What a beautiful number. Miss Gong Lina smiled and suddenly felt very good. At this time, the card representing Luochio on the chessboard slowly moved forward. Then a line of golden words suddenly appeared on the chessboard. As a newbie adventurer, because of the favor of the goddess of luck, you are immune to poison damage. Intermediate. Come on, newbie adventurer. You will become a great adventurer. So, the laughter of the Simic family suddenly stopped. What amazing luck! The owner of the castle at this time said intermediate poison damage immunity is a very practical ability. Even I can't help but feel a little jealous. Luck! Miss Maid smiled slightly, then still picked up the dice with the handkerchief, and then threw it to the next person who was ready to roll. The butler of the castle, Mr. Lisa. Castle, kitchen, trash can. Suddenly, a symbol like a curse seal suddenly appeared in front of the quiet trash can. The symbol rushed directly into the trash can. So, the trash can began to shake, and soon, something seemed to jump out of the trash can. It was a standing kitchen knife. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. 63/84. Chapter 1773. In the process of moving forward, they would encounter enemies, traps, towns, merchants, and even people who issued tasks. Servants with high attack power or defense power would not necessarily be able to defeat low-level enemies. If the servants stood still, they would still be bitten to death by monsters that suddenly jumped out of nowhere. Fighting, avoiding traps, all of these needed to be driven by the servants themselves. As for the encountered items, or the purchase of things, etc., it was up to the master to decide. After the first round of rolling, the masters began to enter the first round of life reduction, and the other was the drawing of the function card. The life reduction was inevitable. Even if it was only 1 point, it would be multiplied by 10 and then deducted. Up to 60 life points would be deducted. For the servants who only had 100 life points at the beginning, the first round of life reduction would obviously seriously affect the master's future action plan. In fact, in the first round of action, the servants were basically not injured, except Miss Gong Lina, who opened the treasure chest due to a wrong judgment, which caused her servant, Tang Tianlin, to lose 23 life points because of the battle. But the battle with the treasure chest beast was finally won. Although she lost 23 life points by defeating the treasure chest beast, Miss Gong Lina also obtained the right to draw 1 more function card. The function card would not be made public, only the master knew the real public use of it. The first round of life reduction was over. The current data of the servants also appeared on the cards that the masters could see. The chessboard was more detailed than imagined, and more magical. The data of the servants could only be seen by the master. This was the data of the servants after the first round. Tang Tianlin, attack, 7 defense, 4 HP, 57 Nan Xiaonan, attack, 6 defense, 7 HP, 60 Dr. Gores, attack, 9 defense, 3 HP, 40 monitoring team member, attack, 8 defense, 7 HP, 70 monitoring team member B, attack, 4 defense, 6 HP, 50 twin maid sister Tina, attack, 10 defense, 5 HP, 70 Mr. Sneeve the gardener, attack, 7 defense, 6 HP, 90 Luochio, attack, 5 defense, 10 HP, 80 passive skill, intermediate poison damage immunity. Actually, if there is an A. Battle in the early stages, The drawing of the function cards is the most exciting. Since it was a card game, it was inevitable that there would be language contact during the card game. Mr. Varley was drawing his first function card at this time, and he said slowly, "This place even has the function of resurrecting the dead. Look, it is a trap card that can only be activated in a desperate situation. A simple adventure is too monotonous, so the existence of the function card gives this game a special charm." Oh, looks like my luck is not bad. As for what kind of function it was, Mr. Varley didn't open it. He just put it in the preparation area on his desk. Why isn't a class change card for the Holy Light series, but a Dark Series one? There was no reason for that, right? Mr. Varley thought to himself. This is not perfect. He, who had always been anxious, suddenly felt deeply worried, but he did not show it. Everyone drew their respective function cards one by one. Miss Gonglina had a smile on her face. In the first round, she got an extra chance to draw a card, probably because she got 2 practical function cards. The last one to draw a card was Mr. Snakel's master, the black dog drooling with saliva. It was unknown if it had been trained before, but it actually knew how to throw dice. When it saw everyone draw a card, it finally placed its paw on the box of functional cards. But the black dog didn't seem to know how to hide the function card it drew. It drew a card, but didn't know how to close it. At this time, in each preparation area, an eye-catching card with the words "probability of double attack" directly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Defense 10. Although he didn't usually play games, especially this kind of game with data, but the initial full value of defense was still very pleasing to look at. But the only 5 points of attack made Boss Luo somewhat dissatisfied. This time, his action points were 4 action points. The area where he had placed the chessboard at the start was a swamp. With 4 action points, he was still unable to leave the swamp. However, the poison immunity that he had obtained for the first time allowed him to remain unaffected by the poisonous miasma in the swamp. After the 4 action points were used, there were no traps or monsters that suddenly appeared on the way. Instead, he saw a wooden box, and after opening it, he found a weapon. Cursed rusty iron sword. Attack 40-47. What kind of rusty iron sword has such a high attack? Boss Luo couldn't help but ponder. If it continues like this game doesn't seem to have any difficulty. Master, there's a designated class change card here. There are 3 classes. Do you want to change your class now? Have the other servants changed their class? I don't know yet. The information of the servants can only be seen by their respective masters. Here, we can only see part of the content. For example, the master's damage immunity, other masters know about it. Who is near me? Boss Luo thought for a while and asked. The closest to you is the castle's family doctor, Gors. The current distance is 39 action units, but whether he is close to you or not depends on his next action direction. Boss Luo lowered his head and thought at this time. Then let's change it. They are Holy Light Priest, Holy Light Knight, Holy Light Elementalist. Master, which one do you want to change your class? None of them are a problem. The problem is, why are they all Holy Light series? How about Knight? Boss Luo looked at the rusty iron sword in his hand. It seems suitable? Okay. You have successfully changed your class to Holy Light Knight, LV 1. You have successfully changed your class and your attributes have been improved. The power of the Holy Light had successfully broken the curse of the cursed rusty iron sword and restored it to its original appearance. Congratulations, you have obtained Great Holy Light Sword, abbreviated as Great Holy Light Sword. Great Holy Light Sword, attack power, 89-99. Boss Luo suddenly felt that there were many adventures in this game, and the treasures were easy to pick up. It was a great experience. At the same time, in the preparation area of the chessboard, Miss Maid's first function card suddenly emitted a silver light, and then directly went into the chessboard. This move surprised the other masters. She used the first function card so soon. Seeing this, Chef Mr. Nelson couldn't help but be a little surprised. It seems that it is at least a function card with a buff effect. Oh, first it was poison immunity, and now it is at least a buff function card. It seems that this lady is really lucky. In this case, I think it will be safer for me to stay away from you. After that, Chef Nelson, who had already thrown out his action points, directly let Dr. Gores, as a servant, move away from Luacio's position on the chessboard. So, next was Blackhound's turn. Action points: 3. Move 3 squares. After Mr. Sneeve knew the distance to move, he quickly let Blackhound specify the direction of his movement. Blackhound has always been his pet, so it could understand many commands. Although he looked like a castle gardener, as a former hunter, he had the ability to domesticate small animals since he was a child. Therefore, although he was a servant, in fact, he was also a master. He was participating in this game alone, but the drawbacks quickly appeared. That was, when encountering a choice problem, Blackhound was still the one leading. He could communicate with animals, but animals obviously couldn't understand the text description. You have encountered a trap. You did not choose to go around, but stepped into the trap. You have angered the wolves in the lair. You are now in danger prey. In an instant, more than a dozen wolves rushed out of the lair. Mr. Sneeve could not help but be frightened at this time. Before the battle was over, even if he survived until the next round of action points, he still could not move. I need at least a weapon. Mr. Sneeve, who could not move, chose to rush into the wolf's lair. Only by using the complex terrain of the lair could he avoid the siege of the wolves. And this grid of the chessboard space already encompassed the entire nest. On the chessboard, the servants were still moving. After several rounds of tossing, the servants, who were originally scattered on the edge of the chessboard, began to make initial contact. Member A of the monitoring team, at this time, shot a sharp arrow and directly nailed a small monster to the trunk. Then a light flashed from his body. This light represented a level up. He subconsciously looked at his servant status at this time. Shadow Hunter, LV4 attack, 49 defense, 25 HP, 376 very good data. At least from his initial attributes at the beginning, it had increased several times. Especially his HP, which was close to 400 points, made Member A feel more at ease. Even though he had played this card game that was all the rage in the Inhuman realm, in reality, the game of Bravehearts would not allow a real person to descend onto the chessboard. There was no such thing as a master and a servant in the game. It was similar to the game of Bravehearts, but it was definitely not the real game of Bravehearts. This was obviously a game created by Mr. Varley himself, especially the chessboard space. I'm afraid this is at least a high-level secret treasure. He began to move again, and before the end of the move, he met an acquaintance who was also a member of the monitoring team. Barnes, team member A, cried out in pleasant surprise. In this chessboard, they were either killing monsters or hurrying along the way. Although, as a vampire, he wasn't uncomfortable with the dark environment, the feeling of being in an unknown danger still made him very uncomfortable. "It's you, Khalidi." Member B also showed a surprised expression at this time, but his situation seemed to be a bit bad. Member B's shoulder was injured, and at this time, he simply bandaged it with a torn cloth from his clothes. At this time, they appeared in the same grid together, and then directly exchanged information. At this time, they learned that Member B's action had ended, and he could only stay there and wait for the next action. At present, Barnes had not changed his class yet, but he had experienced a battle and successfully upgraded his servant character to level 2. "This game is not as simple as I thought," Barnes said with a dignified face at this time. "After becoming a servant, my power completely disappeared. Even if I'm injured, I will still bleed, and I have no way to control it. I have 2 bottles of potion here." Member A frowned at this time, but it seems that I need Mr. Varley's instructions to send it out. From the beginning, Mr. Varley did not have any communication with me at all. I feel like I'm just a real chess piece. On my side, the communication with Captain Corey has not been cut off. Wait a minute. At this time, Member B's expression suddenly became dignified. "Captain Corey said to let you try to resist." Resist what? Member A. Khalidi could not help but be startled at this time, but immediately he understood what his colleague wanted him to resist. "Order from Mr. Varley's order. You have encountered a new adventurer. Throughout history, wealth has been accumulated through blood. Fight kill the new adventurer in front of you, and complete the first blood achievement. At this time, member A. Khalidi suddenly pulled out an arrow from the quiver behind him and put it on the longbow. The arrow was aimed at member B at this time. A sharp cold light flashed above the arrow. Khalidi, what are you doing? Member B. Baines could not help but be shocked at this time. Go. I can't control my body. As soon as Khalidi finished speaking, the sharp arrow was released from the longbow and shot out in a straight line. It hit Team B. Baines' shoulder. Baines had instinctively moved in the face of danger. Otherwise, the arrow would have gone straight for his throat. Go! Go! Khalidi shouted at this time. Baines showed a look of horror, turned around, and fled. But before he could take a few steps, a strange force directly bounced him back. At this time, he could not leave the area of this grid. Whoosh! At this moment, a sharp arrow had already shot out directly behind him and directly pierced through his chest. HP 0. Varley, you actually... This is a game, my good friend. In the banquet hall, Mr. Varley's laughter slowly sounded. At the same time, on the chessboard, the card representing Baines' servant character suddenly burned and disappeared. However, Baines did not appear. At the same time, a wheel the size of a millstone appeared in front of Mr. Corey out of thin air. So let's begin. The first master to turn the punishment wheel. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. As usual. Chapter 1774. The roulette was dark red in color. It was divided into 10 grids. The size of the grids was different according to the strength of the punishment. If the pointer turns to the golden grid, then the punishment will be canceled. Mr. Varley smiled and said, At the same time, your servant will be resurrected, but all the benefits will be cleared. You can return to the starting point and continue the game. The dark red roulette strangely floated in front of Mr. Sewar, and he even subconsciously felt a sense of fear. In the center of the roulette, there was a sculpture of a ferocious, roaring face facing him. The pair of tightly shut eyes on the sculpture were slowly opening at this moment. Enough, Mr. Sewar snorted. Varley Simic, I'm not in the mood to play this boring game here. You know why I'm here. I won't talk nonsense with you. If you agree to cooperate with us, tell us the conditions, and we will continue to discuss. If you don't intend to cooperate with us, then I will leave now. And my subordinates, please release them. Mr. Core's attack didn't attract too much attention. The masters in front of the chessboard didn't care at this time, or they were more concerned about how Mr. Cor would be punished after turning the roulette. I'm afraid, Mr. Varley said indifferently. I can't agree to your request, good friend. Once the game starts, unless there is a winner, the game won't end. As for your subordinates, what about my subordinates? Mr. Cor frowned at this time. He even felt Gong Lina's mocking gaze at him. The monitoring team was not on good terms with the aristocrats of the large clans, especially the heirs of the clans. In the end, it was because the monitoring team was created to restrict the privileges of the aristocrats of the large clans. Therefore, the relationship between the two sides was almost antagonistic in nature. It seems that you still don't know the rules of Varley's game. Miss Gong Lina covered her mouth and laughed. Once you die in the game, the soul of the servant will be trapped in the chessboard forever. Unless you can turn to the golden grid in the punishment roulette, your subordinates can only stay in the chessboard forever. What did you say? Mr. Cor was both shocked and angry. He glared at Mr. Varley and said in disbelief, This kind of game, you actually let your servant join in? Not only his two subordinates went in, but also Mr. Varley's servants. Dr. Gore's, the twin maids Tina, and even the gardener and the chef's two assistants. The two assistants didn't look like vampires at first glance. Just based on their smell, Cor was able to distinguish them immediately. They were just kitchen workers. If they died, then they died. No one would care. However, Dr. Gore's was not a nobody in the world of vampires. He was even somewhat famous. Why would Wally be willing to participate in a board game with such a follower? Why not? Mr. Varley looked at Mr. Cor in confusion. As a servant, a follower, in order to please me, the master, you are willing to participate in the game. Is there anything wrong with this? You are indeed an excellent servant. I'm not in the mood to be crazy here with you. Mr. COR snorted. I don't believe that a mere chessboard can stop me. In an instant, he showed his vampire fangs. Without thinking, his figure turned into a flash of lightning and pounced on the chessboard. He directly raised his hand, his 5 fingers slightly bent into a claw shape, and then aimed at the center of the chessboard and clawed fiercely. Bang! The vampire's claw fiercely hit the chessboard. As if there were sparks, Mr. Core's claw, which used almost 80% of his strength, didn't damage the chessboard at all. I don't believe. The vampire of a monitoring team snorted again. At this time, his body began to emit a dark red light. Obviously, he intended to take this seriously this time, but soon, a sense of danger made this Mr. COR stop. Danger! Danger came from behind him. Mr. COR was shocked, but at this moment his hands and legs were grabbed by something. He looked carefully and found that it was 4 blood-red arms that were grabbing his 4 limbs. It came from the strange punishment roulette. The 4 blood-colored arms seemed to have drained him of all his strength in an instant as they dragged him in front of the punishment roulette. What do you want to do? Let me go. Let me go. Mr. COR struggled in panic, but in the end, he couldn't break free from these 4 bloody arms. Finally, he was brought to the roulette. The bloody arm that caught Mr. Core's right arm suddenly twisted like a poisonous snake. It directly entangled Mr. Core's arm and turned toward the roulette. I don't want to turn. Let me go. Let me go. Mr. COR was frightened. Wally, do you know what you're doing? You don't have the right to do this to me. You don't have the strength. The council knows. They won't let you go. Wally, it's just turning to roulette. The council won't say anything to me. Mr. Wally said indifferently. Besides, we're just playing a game. Do you know a game? There are losers and winners. The winner gets the prize, and the loser gets the punishment. This is a game. The roulette turned. Mr. COR had already stopped his cursing. His eyes were fixated on the wheel as it moved past each area. At this moment, he was like the millions of gamblers in the world. There was only one voice in his heart. You must turn to the golden grid. The roulette began to slow down, and the needle was getting closer and closer to the golden grid. It turned to the golden grid. Mr. COR almost cried out in surprise. But very quickly, the roulette wheel moved slightly, and the golden grid jumped over just like that. Ah, what a boring scene. Miss Gong Lina said indifferently, it's better to turn to the other grids from the beginning. Wally, after all these years, haven't you changed your bad taste? The roulette finally stopped. It stopped on a gray grid. At the same time, lines of words began to appear on the chessboard. As a master, how can you just watch your servant die like that, as if nothing had happened? You feel very sad, so you intend to stay here and accompany your servant for the rest of your life. Ah, you're really a respectable person. What does this mean? Mr. COR was shocked, and his voice was trembling. You will soon understand what this means. Mr. Varley smiled and said, Congratulations, my friend. You got a good punishment. In an instant, the blood-red arm of the punishment roulette loosened its grip on Mr. COR. The moment it loosened, Mr. Sir didn't even think before turning into a blood-red light and rushing towards the banquet hall's door, intending to leave through the door. However, in the next moment, his body suddenly flew back. He saw that the chessboard on the table was emitting a strange silver and red glow. Mr. COR was actually being slowly sucked towards the chessboard on the table. The strange thing was this huge suction force was only directed at Mr. Core. Or, it was only directed at the master who got the punishment. I don't. The frightened scream suddenly stopped. In this way, Mr. COR was directly sucked into the chessboard in front of everyone. Almost at the same time, several function cards in Mr. Core's preparation area were directly transferred to Mr. Wally's preparation area. Mr. Wally grabbed a few function cards and glanced at them, so I think everyone has a better understanding of the game. Let's continue. This game belongs to the brave. The next person to throw is Tiff. The twin-maid sister trembled slightly at this time, then silently picked up the golden dice and threw it. At this time, just when Tiff was throwing, Mr. Wally suddenly looked at Miss Maid across the chessboard. He said, I heard that this lady and your boyfriend's car broke down, so they came here. So, aren't you afraid, beautiful lady? Afraid? Yi said indifferently. I don't know what the master of the castle meant by fear. Mr. Wally smiled at this time, then squinted and said, Miss, are you really lost because your car broke down? Of course. Miss Maid chuckled at this time. Mr. Wally said, It seems that this game is getting more and more interesting. This reminds me of several guests who visited the castle many years ago because they were lost. They also participated in the board game. Oh, it's your turn, Mr. Lisa. Mr. Butler grabbed the dice at this time without any expression. Before grabbing the dice, he suddenly grabbed several function cards from the preparation area and glanced at them, then continued to throw. Mr. Butler's servant was quite ordinary along the way. He didn't encounter any treasure chest, but he killed a few small monsters. In addition, he had been circling around the birthplace. The circle just expanded little by little, but he was the furthest one from the center of the game. Action points. 4 points, another number in the middle. Then, Mr. Lisa's follower card continued to move forward in a circle. At this time, after giving the investment to the owner of the next investment point, Mr. Butler once again grabbed the function card, glanced at it, and put it down again. Then, he remained silent. In fact, Nan Xiaonan suddenly found that although she had no choice but to partner with Butler Lisa, such a partner seemed to be good. She knew that she was probably circling around at this time. Nan Xiaonan didn't think there was anything wrong with this way of doing things. The most terrible thing, when one didn't have the strength, was to seek death. Such a steady way of doing things was unexpectedly to her liking. Nan Xiaonan silently praised Mr. Butler's peaceful game, but at this time, she was thinking about another thing, about the chessboard. After she was sucked into the chessboard, not only all her power was changed, but also became the ability value of the servant character. Even the pressure of the will of the subworld completely disappeared. This chessboard, at least the internal space of the chessboard, seemed to be completely independent of the subworld. As an immortal walking in the crevice of dimensions, or at least used to be such an immortal, Nan Xiaonan was obviously more knowledgeable. This is no longer as simple as a simple imprisonment. While walking, Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but mutter to herself, This place even directly rewrote my star creation force. Even if placed in the crevice between dimensions, I'm afraid it's still rare. And what's this? Suddenly, Nan Xiaonan stopped. It was the end of her action point, and she could only stay within the range of the grid. Although it looked like her card stopped in the corresponding grid from the chessboard, the grid appeared to be very spacious inside the chessboard. She could actually move freely within the range of the grid. Or rather, explore. At least, she actually had a short period of freedom before the next action. What she stepped on was a corner of a slate. The slate was almost completely buried in the soil, but the exposed corner had some words faintly visible. Nan Xiaonan didn't intend to report this matter to the steward, who was her master. She shifted her gaze and directly dug out the slate buried in the soil. She wiped away the soil in the slate and studied it carefully. These words seemed to be, what is it called? She wasn't originally a creature of this subworld, but was unlucky enough to be dragged in. Then, her impression of the words on the slate came from the real Nan Xiaonan, or rather, the knowledge left behind by Nan Xiaonan. But she couldn't recall what these words were at the moment. Probably, I know what these words are, but I just can't remember what they are, or something like that. In short, blind. Great treasure sword. Great holy light treasure sword. This sword was very useful. One slash caused a critical hit, and the direct damage reached 999 points. In an instant, a one-eyed green monster in front of her was killed. Then, the Holy Light Knight, who had just changed profession, had reached LV5 at this time. After the dead one-eyed monster disappeared, a pair of bracers emitting a sapphire blue light remained on the ground. A prompt came from the chessboard. This was a universal bracer suitable for knights. Its function was to slightly increase attack power, slightly increase defense power, and slightly increase the critical hit rate. Boss Luo bent down and picked up the bracers. At this time, a small slate corner entered his sight. This seemed to be exposed because of the loosening of the soil when fighting the one-eyed monster. Hashtag, 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 hashtag. Chapter 1775. Most of the slate was buried in the soil. It was dirty, so Boss Luo didn't bend down to pick it up at this time. He just stretched out his hand. The soil began to loosen automatically, and then the loose slate slowly floated up. The old mud adhering to it separated little by little, and it became very clean. The masters probably couldn't see the movements of the servants on the chessboard. Otherwise, the owner of the castle would probably feel that it was incredible at this time. This was not something that servants could do. In short, the slate had fallen into the hands of Boss Luo. It was an irregular slate. It should have been part of a larger, complete stone slab, but for some reason, it had broken out from the complete stone slab and was buried in the soil. Master, I found something interesting. Boss Luo thought at this time. This chessboard is probably more interesting than I thought. What's the matter? A servant is approaching you. The servant girl's voice also sounded in Luacio's mind at this time. It's the servant girl, Miss Tina. Got it. Boss Luo nodded, then thought for a moment. I am now your servant. This is the master's game. You tell me what to do. I will naturally do it. It's a game. We have to abide by the rules of this game. She had an obvious intention to let her sister, who was her servant, slowly approach the position of Boss Luo's card. Tiff, who was the twin servant girl, ended her turn at this time, but her eyes were fixed as if there was no special intention. But before that, she met Mr. Varley's eyes. Was the game really fair? Perhaps the rules of the game were the same for everyone as long as the participants followed its rules. However, before all this began, the participants themselves had some unfair aspects. They were Mr. Varley's servants. In order to please him, they accompanied him to play this board game. Seeing this, Miss Maid didn't have any reaction except ignoring it. She still used her action point to let the Boss Luo, as a servant, approach the center of the chessboard. In the end, the master and the servant needed to defeat the gatekeeper of the chessboard to win the game. The gatekeeper was on the center of the chessboard. In fact, Miss Maid had always maintained a straight line with obvious intentions in the past few rounds of casting. It seems that the beautiful lady seems to want to end this game as soon as possible. Mr. Varley touched his mustache at this time and looked around. Are you going to challenge the gatekeeper so soon? Miss Maid smiled slightly. I remember that in the rules of the game mentioned by Mr. Varley, it only said that after defeating all the masters, you will challenge the gatekeeper. Only after defeating the gatekeeper can you win the game. But it seems that it doesn't say that you can't challenge before defeating all the masters. There is indeed no such rule. The smile on Mr. Varley's face deepened. But generally speaking, the gatekeeper is extremely powerful. We recommend the master to challenge the gatekeeper after obtaining more resources through continuous adventures and battles. I just want to see. Miss Maid chuckled at this time. What does the gatekeeper look like? I hope your adventure will go well. Mr. Varley smiled. Beautiful lady. At this time, Miss Gonglingna silently listened to the conversation between the two. But in fact, she was actively communicating with her own servant. At this time, the communication between the master and the servant made Tang Tianlin sweat. Profession, swordsman level, LV3 attack power, defense power, and HP had also been improved to a certain extent because of the profession change. But the HP lost in the battle with the treasure beast didn't recover because of the upgrade. Even the wounds on his body were still there. He stopped the bleeding by himself. He found some leaves on the road that were probably not poisonous. After chewing them, he simply applied them to the wounds. Tang Tianlin roughly understood the game at this time, or the things in the chessboard space. But from beginning to end, in addition to letting him act his master, Miss Gonglina had never taken the initiative to talk to him. But at this time, Miss Gonglina's voice suddenly sounded in his ear. What's your name? Tang Tianlin was surprised at this time. He looked around him subconsciously, and then he quickly realized that this was the communication method between the master and the servant. It was probably a telepathic ability. Tang. Tang Tianlin thought about it, and simply said a word. I don't like Asians very much. After a moment of silence, Miss Gonglina coldly said something unpleasant. Tang Tianlin didn't respond at this time. He just said indifferently, I don't know why Miss Gong Lina took the initiative to contact me now. Listen, Tang. Miss Gong Lina's voice sounded again. Although I don't like Asians, that doesn't mean I hate you. In fact, if you're willing to work for me, I can even give you a chance to change your fate. You should know who I am and what my identity is. You are Mr. Varley, the sister of the castle's owner. Tang Tianlin thought at this time. In fact, he really knew very little. Even behind the entire vampire world, these were the blind spots in his knowledge. At the end of the day, he did not step into the extraordinary world due to an accident where his arm mutated. However, he had been hiding all these years, using his profession as a forensic doctor to hide himself. Even if he had extraordinary powers, he had never truly come into contact with the extraordinary world. Even in the land of Kelowna, he didn't even know about the existence of the agency, let alone the non-human forces in a foreign country. I really don't know how you became the castle's kitchen handyman. Miss Gong Lina's voice seemed to have a trace of displeasure. You don't even know the heir of the Tsimus family. It seems that the castle is getting lazier in using people. It seems that she really doesn't know about me. Tang Tianlin thought to himself. He had sneaked in and even exposed himself in front of everyone, and finally became a servant and entered the game. All of this started from the magical operation of the butler, Mr. Lisa. But Gong Lina obviously didn't know the details. Therefore, although she felt strange that Tang Tianlin was not a vampire or a ghoul, but could be a castle's kitchen handyman, she didn't have much doubt. Of course, it was more likely that in the face of great power, Miss Gong Lina didn't care about the behavior of the weak. Mr. Nelson said that as long as we work hard, we will get what we want, Tang Tianlin said suddenly. He said that he can give us immortality, as if he was afraid of the dead and longed for immortality. Tang Tianlin even controlled his tone of voice, which was filled with a trace of expectation and greed. Immortality is very simple. Miss Gong Lina giggled and said, Now, as long as you do as I say, I can make you immortal even without Chef Nelson's help. My rank is much higher than Nelson's. You can't even imagine it. Really? Tang Tianlin's voice had a trace of excitement and urgency. He said quickly, What do you want me to do? But I'm a servant now. No matter what I do, it is under your control. What else can I do for you? It's very simple. I just want you to die in the next battle or in a trap. Miss Gong Lina said with a smile. See, it's very simple. You just need to give up on any place and you will die soon. What good will it do you if I die? Tang Tianlin frowned. You will be punished even if you do that. So, you are giving up on this game? When did I say that I was going to give up this game? But didn't you ask me to? Tang Tianlin couldn't help but be startled. Then, he had a flash of inspiration. Did you get a function card that can resurrect me? No, if it's just a simple resurrection function card, it shouldn't be wasted so easily. So, is there something that requires me to die once to fulfill the condition? Miss Gong Lina didn't answer directly at this time. Next time, do you choose to die? Smart little guy. Oh, now it seems that you're not only good-looking, but also smart. I'm starting to like you a little. Tang Tianlin felt that he would only believe it if she said it 1,000 times. You only have one chance. Miss Gong Lina's voice gradually faded away. Whether you can catch it or not depends on your courage. Of course, you may die, and you will really die. Maybe I just feel that this game is boring and don't want to play anymore, so I plan to go to the side and take a nap. As for the punishment, do you think Wally really dares to punish my sister? Tang Tianlin was silent. Miss Gong Lina had indeed cut off the connection between them again. He silently looked at the environment around him. This place was dark and dilapidated. It was actually the ruins of an ancient city. Collapsed houses could be seen everywhere. On the gray streets of the ancient city, something could even be seen faintly wandering slowly. This was a place where something scary could suddenly jump out at a glance. Perhaps it was a place where monsters could suddenly jump out. Next time, death. Tang Tianlin's next action hadn't come yet, but he didn't know how long it would be before Miss Gong Lina's next throw point. Tang Tianlin couldn't help but fall into a kind of urgent contemplation. Mr. Sneeve was hiding behind a rock at this time. There were many scratches on his body caused by the vicious wolves, After several rounds of throwing points, he couldn't leave this vicious wolf's lair. It was not because the value of action points was not enough to support him to leave this area. It was simply because the battle continued. Before the end of the battle, he couldn't move. But the action points could be accumulated because of this. He didn't have any weapons on him. Even after being rewritten by the chessboard as a servant, he still maintained the defect of a lame leg. It was very inconvenient to move. It could be said that it was a nightmare start. He might be the one who had the worst experience among all the servants. So, barehanded and still at level 1, he began to fight more than 10 vicious wolves with the help of the complex terrain in the lair. Mr. Sneeve chose to break them one by one. As a former hunter, Mr. Sneeve had used his lifetime's knowledge to the limit. He killed the vicious wolves one by one. Through ordinary leveling up, he increased the upper limit of his HP, so that he could reduce his HP every round. But after several leveling up, Mr. Sneeve's HP still didn't exceed 3 digits. It even fell below 60 points. As long as his HP was less than 60 points, once Black Hound rolled 6 points, according to the rule of points *10, his HP would be emptied and he would die. "I can't die here," Mr. Sneeve crazily shouted in his heart. He hid behind a rock, gasping for breath. But this time, there were still 2 vicious wolves in front of him. These were the last 2 wolves. But due to the severe exhaustion of his physical strength, Mr. Snakel had become extremely weak. But his hands didn't stop. His hands were holding a slender stone. Through friction, he was polishing this slender stone bit by bit, making it sharper. It even looked like it was about to reach the spearhead. Finally, the 2 vicious wolves found the source of the bloody smell. At the same time, they looked at the direction of the big stone. Almost as soon as they saw it, they had already rushed out. They directly jumped over the big stone and appeared on top of Mr. Sneeve's head. At this time, Mr. Sneeve's pupils suddenly shrank, and then he grasped the slender stone in his hand with both hands, the stone spear, and pushed it up with all his strength. The stone spear, which had been polished to a sharp enough point, directly pierced the throat of a vicious wolf at this time, and the other vicious wolf smoothly jumped over the big stone and landed in front of Mr. Sneeve. But at this time, Mr. Sneeve directly carried the body of the vicious wolf whose throat had been pierced and directly rushed toward the last vicious wolf in front of him. The dead vicious wolf directly overwhelmed its own kind. The vicious wolf on the ground couldn't help but struggle frantically several times. At this time, Mr. Sneeve had already raised the stone spear again. He ruthlessly smashed down on the head of this final wolf. Again and again, blood splattered everywhere, splattering all over his face. #### PS. As usual. Chapter 1776. I'm a kitchen knife. A thick and long kitchen knife. I once slit many throats in Mr. Nelson's hands. I also used a sharp blade to separate the smooth human skin bit by bit. In fact, I enjoyed the feeling of being cut. I'm a kitchen knife, a sharp kitchen knife. I was proud, I was arrogant, until I knelt in front of a bundle of spider silk. Then I was abandoned by my creator and thrown into a dirty, dark, and messy trash can. I swear, one day, I will temporarily enjoy everything in the world. I will continue to polish myself. I will become sharper. Why is there a kitchen knife here? In the corridor of the castle, a strong man with a square face bent down to pick up the kitchen knife on the ground. Before this, the kitchen knife was standing upright. But soon, when the man appeared, the kitchen knife clanked and fell to the ground. I am a sharp kitchen knife, but I need to play dead now. The man who picked up the kitchen knife weighed it in his hand and then casually waved it. Perhaps because the kitchen knife was unexpectedly more convenient. The man then inserted it into his belt. Then, the man looked around the corridor, opened his windbreaker, and took out a scroll of map from the inner pocket of the windbreaker. Living map. This man was the coachman who was in charge of driving the carriage when Miss Gonglina came. This way. The coachman looked in a certain direction and walked over thoughtfully. I'm a sharp kitchen knife. My creator gave me an order. This was a good opportunity for me to perform well and wash away my humiliation. But now that I was picked up by someone, what should I do? Oh, 2 points. Looks like my luck is really bad. The chef shook his head, then pointed in a direction and let Dr. Gores on the chessboard move over. Because Mr. COR was locked in the chessboard due to the punishment of the roulette wheel, the rolling speed of each round sped up. Unknowingly, it was already the 10th round of rolling. It was the turn of Mr. Sneeve's partner, Black Hound, to roll. Points. 6. At this time, Mr. Sneeve's card, which had been stagnant at the starting point for many rounds, began to move quickly in an instant. He had stayed at this place for too many rounds and accumulated a lot of action points. At this time, Mr. Sneeve ran out of the range of 30 to 40 squares in one breath. Looking at the situation, this Gardener's destination seemed to be the place written on the chessboard map, Roaring Forest. And the closest to Roaring Forest, after Mr. Sneeve, was the servant of the castle's owner, Mr. Varley, the member of the monitoring team, Khalidi. You should tell your master, Mr. Varley, Black Hound, Black Hound, Black Hound, Black Hound, Black Hound. It's just that Black Hound looked at the owner of the castle. Its body trembled slightly. It directly lay on the ground and made a low sound. On the other side, the twin maids seemed to be planning to intercept Boss Luo from the beginning. At this time, they were approaching. If the next round of rolling points was suitable, the two sides would directly meet. Because at this time, Boss Luo's location, coincidentally, was in a canyon, they could only choose to advance or retreat. The twin maid's sister, Tina, was at the exit of the canyon at this time. The difference between the two was only the distance of 2 action grids. At this time, the chessboard suddenly emitted a faint light. The appearance of the light was from Miss Gong Lina's servant, Tang Tianlin's card. "Oh, my sister, did your servant die in the adventure so soon?" Mr. Varley looked at the light with some surprise at this time. This light appeared after the servant died. I didn't expect that the first punishment roulette would be my dear sister. Maybe this is what you want? My dear brother Varley. Miss Gong Lina smiled slightly at this time, and her face didn't have the slightest annoyance when the servant died. So, do you really want me to spin this roulette? Sister Gong Lina, this is the rule of the board game. Mr. Varley said slightly at this time. Even when the Grand Duke and I played this game, he also spun the roulette. Miss Gong Lina chuckled, then indifferently opened a function card in the preparation area. At this time, the function card directly turned into a bright light and entered the chessboard. The punishment roulette did not appear in front of Miss Gong Lina, and Tang Tianlin's card, which was originally annihilated, reappeared in the chessboard at this time. Moreover, Tang Tianlin's card did not return to the starting point. Tang Tianlin was resurrected, but he did not return to the starting point. At least it meant that the function card used by Miss Gong Lina was not resurrecting the dead, but it was a special card with the function of resurrecting the dead. There were several such special cards, but Mr. Varley couldn't figure out which one it was. He thought for a while, then smiled and said, "I look forward to playing with you in the end, sister. I'm also looking forward to it." Miss Gong Lina covered her mouth and chuckled, then picked up a piece of gelatinous fresh brain with a fork, dipped it in the sauce on the blood fountain, and slowly chewed it. Next to her, Miss Maid still used her hand, covered with a handkerchief, to pick up the golden dice. This made Miss Gong Lina suddenly feel that the taste of the food in her mouth seemed to have become less delicious. Perhaps it had been stored for a long time, and it had lost its original taste. The golden dice slowly rotated at this time and finally stopped. Points, too. This happened to be the number to reach the action grid of the maid Tina. If she chose to move forward, of course, she could also move backward, so that the distance between the two sides became 4 grids. Then, under everyone's gaze, Miss Maid showed a smile on her face. The servant card, 1 grid, 2 grids, finally overlapped with the grid where the maid Tina was. The male card overlapped with the female card, and the male card was on top of the female card. The grid is really too small. Miss Maid suddenly said a sentence that made the masters somewhat inexplicable. The environment inside the chessboard is not small. It's enough for activities. Mr. Varley said with a smile at this time. Miss Maid said this castle is also small. Too small, it's petty. Mr. Varley couldn't help but open his mouth. In all honesty, his castle was not small. and it was useless if the castle was too big. It was not a castle, was it? Perhaps it was because of being chased by the twin maids, so he was dissatisfied. Mr. Varley chuckled casually. He liked to play with these guests who came to the castle with a certain purpose. Just as he was now looking forward to the battle between the two overlapped servants, there would probably be a death in the battle. Then the appearance of the punishment roulette. That was the most exciting time. At this time, as the master, the twin maid's Tiff's expression suddenly became strange. This change of expression was easily noticed by Mr. Varley. Then, a feeling of anxiety suddenly began to spread in the heart of the owner of the castle. Oh, damn it. He really hated this feeling of anxiety, and even more so hated his own personality that liked to be anxious. He needed to figure out, otherwise he probably couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, to the extent of restlessness. Lovely Miss Tiff, what happened? The castle owner asked softly at this time. The masters didn't prohibit communication. They could actually be like friends, chatting outside the chessboard, but what they controlled was the life and death of the servants. This game originally appeared in the vampire clan. They didn't have this strange chessboard, but they could create a large enough playground and then put the servants in it. Most of the servants were ancient humans from the farm. The defeated servants would be recovered and then sent to the victorious master for consumption, just like the fighting bull of the glorious sacrifice. What the masters liked the most was to discuss about the servants during the game. At this time, the twin sister looked at the maid and said indifferently, "Guest, even if you choose to talk, you still need my permission." Talk. Mr. Varley frowned slightly. There was indeed such an option as talking, but the purpose of the game was to determine the winner. The majority of the players had always chosen to fight, but there were indeed times when they chose to talk. That was generally in the process of the game. When there was a servant with a huge advantage, other masters could also team up to win. So, this woman intended to team up with the twins temporarily. Mr. Varley didn't think this idea was stupid, but he felt that such behavior was really unreasonable. Could it be that she thinks that her servant in the chessboard space has a way to do that? So, Miss Tiff, don't you intend to agree? The maid said slowly at this time, generally speaking, the winning rate of 2 people is higher than the winning rate of 1 person. Miss Tiff, have you ever thought about winning this game? Winning? Perhaps it was because of what Miss Maid said, or perhaps it was just the word victory, but the older twin was a little distracted at this moment. She subconsciously looked at the owner of the castle, and a trace of panic flashed in her eyes. Yes, the maid said with a chuckle, since the loser has to face the punishment roulette, then I think everyone here will face the punishment roulette. Me, you, or the castle owner, it is possible. Am I right, Mr. Varley? Of course. Mr. Varley responded indifferently. This is the rule of the game. Even if it is me, if I fail, I will also face the punishment roulette. So, Tiff, you can consider this lady's suggestion. Maybe if you team up, you will have a chance to defeat me, or even other masters. Do you want to defeat me, and let me spin the punishment roulette, my lovely maid? Tiff didn't think so. The twin maid suddenly covered her ears at this time and screamed, Tiff, don't team up. Tiff, don't communicate. Kill. Tina, kill him for me. Tiff, Mr. Varley suddenly shouted indifferently, please don't show such a rude look in front of my guests. The emotionally unstable twin maid suddenly trembled at this time. Her face became paler, her lips trembled slightly, and her eyes were full of fear, but she also calmed down at the same time. I'm sorry. So, Tiff, what is your action? Mr. Varley smiled at this time and asked. The 2 maids, who had already quieted down, opened their mouths as if they wanted to say something, but they stopped. Mr. Varley gave her an encouraging look at this time. Miss Tiff, my lovely maid, don't hesitate. This is just a game. You can boldly say what you want to do. Come on, be brave. This is a game for the brave. Chef Nelson couldn't help shaking his head. He probably knew the direction of this matter. Miss Gonglina was watching with interest at this time. Mr. Steward's face didn't show much expression. He just suddenly grabbed the function card in the preparation area and looked at it a few times. Blackhound was eager to try. He knew it was time for him to start rolling. He only knew that when he played dice with his master in the wooden house, he always got delicious food every time. But now he had already rolled many times, but he still didn't get any reward. I, under everyone's gaze, the twins' sister Tiff suddenly gritted her teeth and said heavily, I agree to negotiate. Oh, it seems that this will be a fierce battle. What did you say? Mr. Varley couldn't help but open his mouth. The choice of the twin maids was completely out of his expectation. Not only Mr. Varley, but Chef Nelson also had a look of disbelief at this time. Mr. Steward couldn't help but frown at this time. Only Miss Gonglina looked at the maid sister suspiciously at this time. Oh, this is your choice? Very good. Mr. Varley smiled quickly. I like your decision, Miss Tiff. This makes today a new day full of unexpected surprises. I look forward to your performance, Miss Tiff. The smile on his face was very good to cover up everything. This was really a generous master, but Mr. Varley didn't think so at this time. He only felt the feeling of anxiety in his heart getting stronger and stronger, and this anxiety even had a preliminary effect. His maid had defected to the enemy, and it was right under his nose. So anxious. Hashtag, 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 PS 6584ths. Chapter 1777. A moment ago, in the chessboard space. At the end of the canyon, Luaccio saw a figure standing quietly. The twin servant girl. She stood quietly in the wind, and the ribbon tied into a bough behind her clothes was fluttering in the wind with a calm smile on her face. This reminded Luaccio of the lotus growing in the lake. Its growth was very low, almost pressing on the surface of the water. He walked towards her and took the initiative to greet her. Hello, Miss Tina, we meet again. You can recognize me? The servant girl blinked at this time, seeming to be curious. Because of curiosity, she sized him up. Why not? Boss Luo smiled and said, I have some expertise in recognizing people. Few people can directly distinguish Tiff and me. The servant girl shook her head slightly and said, Because we are always on the move, even the people in the castle often can't recognize us. If you want others to recognize you clearly, why don't you make something to mark you? Boss Luo said, Miss Tina and Miss Tiff are basically the same in terms of clothes, makeup, and even hairstyles. It's very likely that others can't recognize them. If it's possible, Ms. Tina can wear a blue ribbon while Ms. Tiff can wear a pink ribbon. I don't think they'll be mistaken that way. Sounds like a very good suggestion. The servant girl smiled at this time. If there's a chance, we'll consider your suggestion. I heard that your master intends to negotiate with my sister. It should be. Boss Luo nodded and said casually, Basically, we all prefer to solve problems without violence. But sir, your outfit doesn't seem to be convincing. The servant girl laughed at this time. What did she see? This black-haired, black-eyed young man was holding a sword that was shining with a golden light. Not only that, he had so many pieces of equipment on him that it made people feel like they were going to go blind. As long as the light of the equipment was too strong, it was like a light bulb that was tens of thousands of watts. It's probably because my luck is pretty good. Boss Luo looked at the big, holy sword in his hand. Transforming into a servant and entering the game did not give him a storage slot to store items, so he could only hold them. Boss Luo felt that such a design was somewhat unreasonable. Looking at his God's game, the players all came with their own storage slots when they logged in, and there were so many of them that they didn't even need to increase the cost or condition of the slots. It could be said that it was very kind. At this moment, a giant eagle suddenly appeared in the sky above the canyon's exit. This giant eagle was most likely a type of monster. Its black claws even had a metallic luster to them. Even its feathers created sparks as it swept past the rocks on the canyon's cliff. There will be such monsters. They will always wander around the chessboard space. They won't stay in a fixed place and wait for the servants to step on the mines. Half of the time, it was considered a sudden battle incident. At this time, seeing that the giant eagle monster's sharp claws were about to grab Luaccio's shoulders, it probably wanted to hunt for food. Perhaps its nest was on the canyon's cliff. Seeing this situation, Miss Maid instantly retreated a lot. She had encountered this kind of giant eagle monster a long time ago. After all, she had arrived at the canyon's exit early. Her purpose was naturally to block the servants who were about to pass through here. She had seen this giant eagle monster's attack. It was something that she couldn't resist for the time being in her current situation. Miss Maid originally thought that maybe it would take some time. Maybe she would lose a bit of HP to end the battle. But now it seemed that she didn't even need to start. This guy, I'm afraid that he will soon be buried under the claws of this giant eagle monster and become its food. What a poor guy. Then what did she see? She saw that in the face of the diving giant eagle monster, Boss Luo didn't panic. He turned around and slashed out with his sword. The golden sword even slashed out a crescent-shaped arc, instantly meeting the diving giant eagle monster. Then, the giant eagle monster was directly broken by the crescent-shaped arc. The monster also maintained its diving posture, but its body had been divided into two at this time. Bang, bang! Falling. Before falling, the giant eagle monster's body had been split into two, and it crashed directly to the ground from Miss Maid's left and right. Are we really playing the same chessboard game? Miss Tina, I hope I didn't scare you. Boss Luo said slowly at this time. This place is very dangerous. You have to be careful. How much attack power do you have? Miss Maid couldn't help but blurt out at this time. But as soon as she asked, she regretted that she probably wouldn't get the answer. Who would leak their own information to their opponent? Especially this kind of core information. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, Now, it should be 397 points, but this sword is a bit special. If there is a critical hit, it seems to be able to ignore defense and directly hit 999 points of attack. Well, it seems that this monster's HP should be less than 1,000. Ignore defense. 999 points of damage. God, her current HP was only a little more than 300 points. She almost couldn't stand still. Under the calm surface, there were waves in her heart. Tiff, Tiff, did you hear my voice? Don't fight. Don't fight. You'll die. Tina will die. He'll kill me. We're not playing the same game. Tiff. This was a high-pitched and sharp sound, as if something erupted from the depths of her body, like a surging tide. I agreed to negotiate. Oh, it seems that this will be a fierce battle. What did you say? In this way, under Mr. Varley's calm gaze, Tiff, the elder sister of the twin maids, slowly walked to Miss Maid with a trace of anxiety. The team was formed. In order to form a team, the two different servants must meet each other, and the masters must reach an agreement. Then, in each subsequent round, the team member's casting point would be combined into one person's casting point, and the servants in the team would advance and retreat together. That's a very wise decision, Miss Tiff. Miss Maid smiled at this time, and then said indifferently, I prefer to cast points, so let me be in charge of the next casting point, okay? Okay. Tiff reluctantly showed a smile at this time. This was equivalent to handing over the control of her servant, Tina. At this time, the elder sister of the twin maids couldn't help but avoid the eyes of the master of the castle. Then, the masters continued to cast points. When it was Mr. Nelson's turn to cast points, he changed his previous action pattern of avoiding as much as possible and actually vaguely pushed Mr. Gores, as a servant, in the direction of the chessboard canyon. The elder sister of the twin maids looked at the chef's eyes at this time. Mr. Nelson just gently shook his head, showing a helpless look. The general meaning was, if you can succeed, you don't need me. You see, I'm avoiding as much as I can. Okay, I'm a sharp kitchen knife. I don't have feelings. I've walked a long way with this man in his belt, turning here and there. I don't know where I'm going. Originally, I've never left Mr. Nelson's kitchen. Where am I? Where am I? I don't want to touch this man's dangling thing. It will make me want to cut it off. I can't control this impulse. Will he dissolve me? Miss Gong Lina's coachman stopped at this time. They were deep in the east wing of the castle, but there was no road in front of them. Only the end of the corridor. The wall was made of rough stone bricks. At this time, the coachman was looking at the living map in his hand, muttering to himself, Is this the place? Then the coachman stepped back, thought for a while, and took out the kitchen knife he picked up on the road. He thought for a moment, and resolutely knocked the stone wall with the handle of the kitchen knife. Stop, you stupid guy. I'm a sharp kitchen knife. I'm used to cut things. Stop. Dong, 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 dong. The coachman's hands suddenly stopped, because the knocking sound had obviously changed. He inserted the kitchen knife into his belt again, then stretched out his fingers and began to touch the brick on the wall that produced different sounds. After a while, he succeeded in digging out the brick a little. Then the inside of the wall began to make a grinding sound. Then the whole wall directly rotated, revealing the tunnel behind it. At this time, the coachman grabbed the map again and muttered to himself in surprise, "This map is so magical." He remembered that before he came here, this passage was not marked on the map. This passage had automatically expanded when he was close to this area, and only then did he try to see if there was any mechanism on the wall. As long as I hold this map, no matter where I go, it will automatically expand. This made the coachman couldn't help but have an incredible idea. Once his idea was verified, the value of this living map would be immeasurable. Especially in unexplored areas like mazes, its effect would be even more unimaginable. The coachman couldn't help breathing faster. He looked down and saw Miss Gong Lina marked on the map. From the beginning, Miss Gong Lina and Mr. Varley had been staying in the banquet hall and didn't leave. This really gave him great convenience. From the known areas on the map, except for the banquet hall, there was almost no one walking around the castle at this time. But the areas that hadn't been expanded on the map were unknown. The coachman took a deep breath and carefully walked into the tunnel behind the stone wall. At this time, the words that Miss Gong Lina had told him when she gave him the map rang out in the coachman's mind again. "Zamas, my brother seems to be doing some secret experiments in his castle. You go and help me dig out this secret as much as possible." At this time, what made Mr. Coachman Zamas puzzled was that Miss Gong Lina, who rarely had contact with Mr. Varley, somehow knew that Mr. Varley was carrying out some kind of secret experiment in the castle. Rumble. After he went in, the stone wall rotated again and then closed, as if it had never been opened. On the way forward, they encountered several battles again. The twin maid's sister, Tina, followed behind them at this time, and saw the attacks that made her feel despair again and again. This guy must have obtained an amazing profession and succeeded in changing his profession. But Tina found that she couldn't find out what kind of profession it was, and naturally, she couldn't send the information to Tiff. "Tiff, Tina is having a headache now. This guy always ends the battle with one strike. You didn't hear it wrong. It's a normal attack. He didn't even use a single skill. Are we really playing the same game?" Tiff heard it. "Tina, try harder. Mr. Varley must be dissatisfied with our actions. So, he has already hinted to Mr. Nelson to take action. This time, Tina must find a chance to find out the ability of this servant. We still have a chance to make up for our mistakes. Tina knows, but it's really difficult. It's too difficult. Unless there's a monster that he can't kill with one strike. Then let's go to the Roaring Forest." Tiff will encourage her master to go to the Roaring Forest, saying that there are important items that can help to defeat the final guardian. It's one of the items that must be collected in the game. She will definitely agree to go to the Roaring Forest. Roaring Forest is not. Tina understands. Tina will continue to work hard. Tiff also has to work hard. Anyway, he seems to have noticed me. The twin maid's sister hurriedly restrained her thoughts at this time. Boss Luo, who was leading the way, suddenly stopped and smiled. "Let's go to the Roaring Forest." The maid's body couldn't help but tremble slightly. This was something that she had just discussed with Tiff. Tiff shouldn't have time to encourage the mysterious young man's master to go to the Roaring Forest. How'd he know? A chill began to spread from the maid's back at this time, but she only saw that Boss Luo suddenly took out an irregular slate. The slate projected a faint light to the distance. That was the location of the Roaring Forest. "I picked it up on the road. It seems to be guiding me there." Boss Luo smiled faintly. "Miss Tina, are you not feeling well? Why do you look a little pale?" Maybe because I'm tired." Tina forced a smile at this time, thinking that it was okay. Maybe she was too nervous. It turned out that it was because of the slate, not because he could know the conversation between Tiff and herself. Otherwise, it would be too scary. Even Mr. Varley couldn't do it. "Oh, I remember this kind of language." Nan Xiaonan, who was still moving forward in circles, suddenly stopped at this time. She was quite safe in the last few rounds of operations and didn't encounter any danger. She just took it as an outing to enjoy the scenery and casually studied the slate in her hand. This kind of language is... Nan Xiaonan stared at the words on the slate seriously at this time. After searching thoroughly from the knowledge she inherited, she finally recognized it. It seems to be called Oracle Bone Script? Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. As usual. Chapter 1778. Oracle Bone Inscriptions. Nan Xiaonan was sure that the words on the slate were Oracle Bone inscriptions according to the memory of the original owner of this body. But why did this language, which clearly belonged to the ancient Kelowna kingdom, appear in Mr. Wally's chessboard and even recorded in this way? Nan Xiaonan couldn't figure out. She knew too little information, and her understanding of this subworld was not deep enough. She didn't study the various important social forms well, and she didn't know how to translate this ancient Oracle Bone inscriptions. That's right, Nan Xiaonan didn't understand at this time, and the real Nan Xiaonan didn't understand either. Oracle Bone inscriptions, for her, at most, was at the level of an ordinary person at a glance. She could at most recognize the meaning of one or two words. So this is a useless slate? However, Nan Xiaonan was a little unwilling to give up. After all, she had picked it up by accident. Based on her many years of Jianghu experience in the dimensional crevices and her woman's intuition, she felt that this stone slab might hide some secrets. Perhaps it could help to solve the mystery of this chessboard. At this moment, the slate in her hand suddenly emitted a faint light and then shot to the front. It was very likely to be a guide. Unfortunately, she still had the feeling that she was useless. All of her actions were under the control of the butler, Lisa. Mr. Butler. Mr. Butler? Nan Xiaonan hesitated for a moment and decided to take the initiative. She finally took the initiative to communicate with Mr. Butler with her mind for the first time. This was the ability between the master and the servant. But after so many rounds of casting points, Nan Xiaonan didn't take the initiative to contact the butler of the castle, and the butler of the castle was only responsible for casting points and then driving the card. What's the matter? Butler Lisa's voice suddenly sounded in Nan Xiaonan's ears. This made Nan Xiaonan, who didn't have any expectations at first, suddenly feel a sense of surprise. I feel that if we keep going in circles like this, is it suitable for my growth? Nan Xiaonan asked tentatively because she couldn't figure out Mr. Butler's attitude. Then tell me, what should we do? Mr. Butler's voice sounded again. I think I should be able to challenge some higher-level monsters now, which is beneficial for gaining experience. Besides, I think I should also change my equipment. Nan Xiaonan at this time patiently said, level up, you know? I'm just a LV1 commoner now. Do you have any opinion on the identity of a commoner? Mr. Butler unexpectedly said at this time, I was once a commoner too. She suddenly didn't know what to say. Then, she suddenly remembered the reason why she and Tang Tianlin entered the board game. But, Mr. Butler, didn't you just tell me that we're going to the Roaring Forest? Did I tell you that we're going to the Roaring Forest? Lisa's voice carried a hint of doubt. Why did I ask you to go to the Roaring Forest? I don't know what to do. Nan Xiaonan at this time said with a very firm tone. But sir, you do want me to go to the Roaring Forest. Although you didn't tell me the reason, I believe that you must have your own reason, but I'm not smart enough to understand it in a short time. That's right, you don't look very smart. Mr. Lisa gave a positive answer. Well, since I said that I want you to go to the Roaring Forest, then go to the Roaring Forest first. Maybe there's a reason. Outside the chessboard, Mr. Lisa looked at the various servant cards on the chessboard. At this time, it seemed that the servant cards were intentionally or unintentionally beginning to surround the Roaring Forest at this time. Did something really happen? But I really can't remember. Mr. Lisa was a little confused. Then she grabbed the function cards in the preparation area and looked at them. What kind of function cards do I have? It seems that everyone seems to want to go to this place. Mr. Varley looked at the overall situation. Whether it was the gardener Sneeve who opened the most difficult door, or Miss Maid who had just turned her maid at this time, they all wanted to go to the Roaring Forest. As for Chef Nelson, he didn't directly ask Mr. Lisa to go to the Roaring Forest, but apparently, Mr. Lisa had figured out Mr. Lisa's intention. He felt that when they met in the roaring forest area, there would be a fierce battle. It seemed to be a good opportunity to harvest. As the saying goes, two tigers, one would always overwhelm the other and get hurt. Then I'll go and join in the fun. Mr. Varley's action point was instantly cleared, and as his servant, Khalidi at this moment, could only be driven by resentment at the moment. But for some reason, Miss Gong Lina stopped moving forward. It seemed that since her servant was resurrected, she fell into some kind of stagnation, and this stagnation had been going on for 3 rounds. She still seemed to choose to stagnate. Or this round, she could only stagnate, but there was no trace of anxiety on Miss Gong Lina's face. She just said that she was thirsty and asked Tiff, as a maid, to make some blood-red tea for her. Intermission. The twins' elder sister, Tiff, quickly went to the side, and after a while, she came back with a tea set and served the blood-red tea to everyone one by one. I don't need it. Miss Maid waved her hand and refused. The maid Tiff didn't seem to be surprised at all, and then came to Mr. Varley's side. Before she left, she seemed to press something toward the base of the teacup. Mr. Varley took a look at it quietly. It was the information about the servant in the same group as her that the maid secretly recorded while brewing the blood-red tea. High attack power, fatal attack. There was only a simple description and no more information. This made Mr. Varley couldn't help but feel puzzled. What was the concept of high attack power? What was the concept of fatal attack? His servant's current attack power was also very high. For ordinary monsters, her arrows could also be fatal. She had already followed him for a few rounds, but only gave such information. Was she too lazy, or did she have other ideas in her mind? Mr. Varley touched his mustache and suddenly showed a thought-provoking smile. He looked at Tiff. His gaze made the maid tremble slightly. It seemed that Master Varley was not satisfied. She didn't know if Tina had any more useful information at this time. At this moment, the maid Tiff, who had just arrived, suddenly heard Yu Yi ask with a chuckle, "The game has been going on for a while. I think there will be a big battle. Do you think we can win this game? Until the end, who knows who will be the winner?" Tiff's answer was not wrong at this time. "You don't seem to be very worried." Miss Maid said lightly, "I mean, if we lose, we have to face the punishment roulette. You don't seem to be very worried about this. Or do you actually have a way to deal with the punishment roulette even if you lose?" "How can it be?" The servant girl's expression became a little unnatural. She smiled and said, "The loser must spin the punishment roulette. There is no way to avoid this punishment. Besides, you're wrong. I'm worried that we'll lose. It's just that I don't show it." Miss May just smiled faintly, which made the maid Tiff feel creepy all of a sudden. This feeling of fear was almost simultaneously transmitted to the heart of Tina, who was in the chessboard. Even the chessboard's ability didn't seem to isolate the telepathy between the twins who were born as conjoined twins and later separated. Tina's heart really had an indescribable fear at this time. Again, he picked it up again. This guy picked up things again. So many times she had seen it with her own eyes. He was so lucky that he could pick up things almost every step he took. In fact, this time he had only casually slashed apart a man-eating flower that was blocking his way. He really didn't know that man-eating flowers were everywhere. They weren't even considered monsters, but they were actually able to drop items like potions. And it was a life recovery item. Life recovery, some of the most precious items in the chessboard. Looking at this game, every round, the life of the servant would be reduced. It was actually trying to find a way to let the servant die. Under such a central idea, it was easy to find weapons to increase the servant's power, armor, and even one-time use items. But this life recovery item was the only thing that could be found in the chessboard. "Hey, chessboard, Mr. Wally. Master seems to be your owner?" Miss Tina. Boss Luo suddenly shouted. What's the matter?" Tina replied in a panic subconsciously. Boss Luo gave a quiet look. "Nothing, I just want to ask. Miss Tina, have you played this game before?" "Yes." Tina nodded. She felt that she couldn't be passive like this forever. She couldn't judge what kind of ability he was hiding by just observing his moves. She could only get closer to him and temporarily gain his trust to get more information. As long as she could figure out his ability, she would be able to find a way to deal with it in this chessboard. There was no absolute invincible power in this chessboard space. Do you also play with Mr. Wally? Sometimes. Tina thought for a while and said, sometimes when there are too few participants, Mr. Wally will let us go. Luaccio thought for a while and said, I heard that Mr. Soar has been locked in the chessboard because he lost. Is it true that the master who lost will be locked in the chessboard? He should be just unlucky to get this punishment. Tina shook her head and said, in fact, the punishment on the chessboard is very light, and there's even a choice of no punishment. But a heavy punishment does exist, right? Boss Luo thought for a while and said, since there is a heavy punishment, it means that there will be a heavy punishment. Then, as a game participant, as someone who has participated in the game several times, won't it be harmful? There is nothing to be afraid of, Tina said indifferently, because most of us participate as masters, and we won't play in person. Masters don't need to play, and they can avoid a lot of danger, but the person who spins the chessboard is also the master. Boss Luo reminded. Tina suddenly knew what Boss Luo really wanted to say. She calmed down and said lightly, you don't have to worry about this, because every time when the game is about to end, Mr. Wally will team up with us. It is difficult for a single servant to defeat the keeper. As for our team, we win together. Naturally, no one needs to spin the chessboard because they lost. Who is the one who usually loses? Naturally, it is Mr. Wally's opponent. For example, like me? Boss Luo blinked at this time. Tina realized that she was tricked after all, and she couldn't help but frown. Who knows? Maybe if you choose to ally with Master Wally, he will be very happy to accept it. Mr. Wally has always liked to play this chessboard game, Luaccio said slowly at this time. He has never lost once. Is he the winner every time? Yes, Master Wally has never lost once. Tina sneered at this time and said, even if the opponent is the elder in the clan, a very powerful elder in the clan, he is still not Mr. Wally's opponent. No one knows the rules of this game better than him, so there has never been a challenger who can defeat Master Wally. In fact, you still have a chance now. As I said, if you choose to team up with Master Wally, he may agree for the sake of Tiff and me, so that you can avoid being punished. But in this way, Mr. Wally has no opponent. Boss Luo smiled and said, you see, in order to not let you be punished, Mr. Wally will ally with us. In the same way, in order to not let Mr. Nelson be punished, he will also ally with Mr. Nelson. Even the butler of the castle, Mr. Gardner, will do the same. Oh, and Miss Gonglina, as Mr. Wally's sister, I think Mr. Wally will not want to see anything happen to her. In this way, the only opponent left is Mr. Cor, but, looking at the beautiful twin maids, Boss Luo said calmly, Mr. Cor has already lost in the first few rounds. This, according to this theory, actually according to her own theory, after the only opponent, Mr. Cor, failed, the game was actually equivalent to the end. But the game was still going on. Boss Luo said softly at this time, Mr. Wally, I don't know if there will be a time when you think like this. For example, if I don't bring these servants this time, and I win alone, like this. Twin maids. Tina stopped walking abruptly. She lifted her head and her face turned pale. Of course, this is just an assumption based on my understanding of Mr. Wally, so it can't be taken seriously. Take this as insurance. After all, we are teammates now. Boss Luo threw the health potion in his hand in front of the maid. Don't worry about it. Let's continue on our way. Roaring Forest is coming. When the potion was thrown, Tina instinctively reached out and caught it. At this time, she looked down at the potion in her hands and couldn't help but be absent-minded. Congratulations, you have received a large amount of health potion, recovering 280 HP in one go. Master Wally, he never treated her and her sister Tiff so well. Hashtag PS 6684. Chapter 1779. It was as if all the secrets were hidden in a secret place. After Ms. Gonglina's coachman, Mr. Zamas, entered the secret passage, he could feel the mystery of this place. There were naturally lit white candles on the walls, and there were neatly arranged Batman statues on both sides of the passage. What were Batman statues? They were as tall as humans, with their wings folded, and they were in a half-squatting position. Looking at the row, he didn't know how many of them there were. There was also the cold wind that brought a chill. As Miss Gonglina's coachman, Zama's was also a vampire. However, the strangeness of this place still surprised him a little. He held the living map in his hand, and as he kept moving forward, he kept expanding the road ahead. It was also because of the existence of the living map that Zama's could determine whether the road ahead was dangerous or not. At least, it didn't seem to be dangerous now. However, the speed of expansion of the map seemed to have slowed down. Previously, the expansion of the unknown area was about a finger's length from his position on the map. However, the current expansion seemed to be about 2 fingers' length. Zama's even had an intuition that the expansion distance was still shrinking little by little. It seemed that there was a mysterious force that was resisting the expansion of the living map. Fortunately, from the situation on the living map, the people in the banquet hall still hadn't left, which meant that his actions hadn't been discovered for the time being. It seemed that Ms. Gonglina was delaying Mr. Varley and others to create more time for herself. I must do something for Miss Gong. I can't let her down. Zama's thought. He prayed silently in his heart. At this time, the expansion of the living map suddenly stopped. The map expanded in the direction he was walking and finally stopped in front of a metal door. When Zama's walked in front of the metal door with doubts in his heart, the expansion of the map still didn't continue. It seemed that the metal door was the end of the map. But how could there be an end? Zama's stared at the metal door. It wasn't tightly closed. Instead, there was a crack. It was in a state of being unlatched. There was even a glimmer of light coming out from the crack. This strange situation made Zama's nervous. He calmed down and then pulled out the kitchen knife from his waist. Then he put the knife into the crack and slowly pried open the metal door. Why me again? Mr. Kitchen Knife was thinking about this question. He felt that he had been greatly insulted. He was a sharp kitchen knife that had reaped countless lives and been stained with the blood of hundreds and thousands of people. It should have a more honorable use. Enough! The voice came out of nowhere, startling Zamas. Even his hair stood on end, and a numb feeling began to spread throughout his body. He stopped and looked around nervously. He lowered his voice and said, "Who is it? Who's talking?" "It's me. Open your eyes wide and take a good look at what you're holding in your hand." The voice sounded again. "It's you." At this time, Zamas could not help but be startled. He raised the living map in his hand a little. "You're talking." Sure enough, maps with magical power are not simple. "What are you? A soul sealed in the map?" Kitchen Knife. Mr. Kitchen Knife was not angry, not angry, not angry. He was really not angry. It was a sharp kitchen knife, emotionless. It suddenly broke free from Zamas's palm, and then slipped into the gap of the metal door, leaving this message, "I hate you to death." At this time, the coachman was confused. He even opened his mouth. What did he see? The kitchen knife he picked up from the ground was alive? At this time, Zamas could not help but shiver. Seeing that the kitchen knife had slipped into the metal door, he instinctively stretched out his hand and pushed hard, directly opening half of the door directly. "Wait," he said, and stepped into the space behind the metal door. At the same time, the neatly arranged half-squatting bat statues on both sides of the wall of the secret passage suddenly opened their eyes. On the living map, the word danger suddenly appeared. But the coachman had no time to look at the changes of the living map at this time because he had successfully pushed the door open, and at this time his eyes were attracted by something. It was a kind of beauty that he could not forget as long as he saw it. It was like a poignant beauty that was deeply imprinted in his soul. It was a beautiful face that was so beautiful. It deeply attracted everything, and even made him completely forget everything around him. Zamas was absent-minded, and step by step, he walked toward this thing that attracted all of his eyes and consciousness. Miss, is that you?" he whispered in a low voice. At the same time, Mr. Kitchen Knife, who was standing alone, was now tilting his knife sideways. His eyes were on both sides of the blade, so he had to tilt his body to see the thing in front of him. "Oh my God, what is this?" I am a sharp kitchen knife. Emotionless. Very powerful. You can't scare me." Creak. Bang. The metal door suddenly closed. She did not know whether that useless kitchen knife was moving properly again. Nan Xiaonan was silently calculating the time in her heart. But she did not know whether this kind of calculation of time was useful, because she did not know whether the time in the space inside the chessboard was synchronized with the time outside. Even before entering the chessboard, she quietly drew the order, but whether it was properly transmitted to the kitchen knife was a problem. There were too many things she was not sure about, and the unreliable butler Lisa kept making Nan Xiaonan feel tired. "Sir, you're going the wrong way. We are going to the roaring forest, not the nightmare swamp." "Oh, aren't we going to the nightmare swamp? Are you doubting my memory?" "I'm not just doubting your memory. I don't believe in your memory at all." Looking at the direction she was going, and the intersection of the light of the slate was constantly expanding, Nan Xiaonan felt really tired. Maybe the master she had was not this butler, but another master, and the situation would be much better. For example, if she could have a master like Mr. Luo, wouldn't she be happy now? Did something float by just now? Nan Xiaonan could not help but be startled at this time. She subconsciously raised her head and seemed to have seen a black shadow passing directly over her head. The speed was very fast. But obviously, this question could not be answered by the butler, who could not see the inside of the chessboard. This made Nan Xiaonan feel very uneasy. But at this time, the butler began to move again as a servant. Apparently, he was thinking about the direction of the mysterious black shadow. No, if this guy with a bad memory randomly commanded, sooner or later, she would not even know how she died. Nan Xiaonan could not help but become anxious. She tried to use her legs to resist the force that appeared behind her and kept pushing her forward since she first entered the chessboard space. Nan Xiaonan resisted at first, but found that it was useless. It was like an adult pushing a child from behind. After several futile struggles, Nan Xiaonan had already given up. Once the pushing force slowly appeared, she simply took the initiative to start moving forward. But this time it seemed to be different. She actually stopped and did not act according to the master's order. How could this be? She could not help but become very surprised. Nan Xiaonan waited for a moment and found that she did not continue to move. While she was very puzzled, Nan Xiaonan even tried to start moving in the opposite direction. She succeeded. She didn't follow her master's instructions and moved in the opposite direction. Not only did she not cause the push force to appear, she even succeeded. No, the push force did appear, but as soon as it appeared, it was offset by something, so she was no longer restricted by her movements. Nan Xiaonan ran for a long distance in one breath. She finally stopped when the distance of her action points was exhausted. She could no longer move forward. Is it because of this slate? She subconsciously raised the stone tablet in her hand and carefully observed it. Her intuition told her that it was because she had obtained this stone tablet that she was able to rely on her own will to move freely within a limited range. Did I just ask you to move in this direction? At the same time, Mr. Butler's voice sounded in Nan Xiaonan's ears again. She even said without thinking, "Yes, dear sir, you asked me to move in this direction. You see, inside the chessboard, I can only act according to your instructions. How can I run in other directions? Sir, have you forgotten?" "No, I have no problem. It's indeed in this direction. It's okay." Seeing that the butler stopped talking, Nan Xiaonan could not help but feel relieved. She was actually a little scared, afraid that the butler would find out that she did not follow the instructions. Would this violate the consistent rules of the chessboard game and attract the attention of the owner of the castle, Mr. Varley, the chessboard holder? But it seemed that it was because of Butler Lisa's good memory, It seems that I am very lucky this time. Indeed, as Nan Xiaonan thought, her card also moved toward the position of Roaring Forest at this time. "Oh, Lisa, are you going to join the fun?" The owner of the castle looked directly at his butler at this time. He was quite surprised and puzzled. Mr. Butler looked at the function card in his hand at this time and looked at the position of his servant on the chessboard, showing a look of serious thinking. Finally, in the face of the unchangeable facts, he slowly nodded. "It looks like the situation is like this." "What kind of answer is this?" Mr. Varley couldn't help but shake his head, then said indifferently, "You can do whatever you want. It's rare for you to be so active. I hope you can have fun." At this moment, Miss Gong Lina's pair of beautiful eyes suddenly looked at the butler and smiled. "Varley, you are really friendly to your butler. I think if it were me, I would be more strict with my butler." Mr. Varley smiled at this time. "I have always believed that strict management is difficult to make servants happy. If servants are not happy, they will not serve me wholeheartedly." Miss Gong Lina smiled non-committally, and then suddenly flipped open one of the function cards that she had never used before, except for the one that magically resurrected her servants. The function card disappeared, and a golden light directly entered the chessboard at this time. As for what kind of function card it was, the chessboard did not prompt at this time. Generally speaking, such unrealistic functions were usually set up as trap cards. Mr. Varley quickly recalled the contents of all the function cards in the whole box of function cards at this time, trying to find the meaning behind Miss Gong Lina's actions. Could it be that she drew the class change function card of that profession? If that's the case, the anxiety in Mr. Varley's heart, for some reason, suddenly began to become strong again. He took a deep breath and then sobered up a little. He looked at the function card combination in his preparation area, and his anxiety calmed down a lot. Although he did not draw the Holy Light series function card at the beginning to create the combination of servant and card set that he expected, the current set was also one of his backup plans. It was almost time to show the power of this invincible card set. The only troublesome thing was that the servant who got the intermediate poison immunity at the beginning. However, at most, it was just a little troublesome, unless he could get the advanced poison immunity. At this time, the words appeared on the chessboard. "As an experienced adventurer, you have once again received the favor of the goddess of luck. Because of your kindness, you have received the protection of nature spirits and obtained poison immunity, advanced. In short, do your best. This is already the highest level of poison immunity. You are really a sinful man." The owner of the castle couldn't help but stare at the position where these lines of metal text appeared on the chessboard at this time. This was the position where the boss Luo's card was placed as a servant. The golden smoke text was so dazzling at this time. It was so bright that the owner of the castle almost felt like he couldn't open his eyes. Mr. Varley really felt very anxious at this time. What was this called? As long as you are afraid of something, it will happen? But that couldn't be. He was the owner of this chessboard, especially since he remembered all the function card combinations in his heart. Although the space of the chessboard was always changing, he knew exactly what would be triggered at the approximate location. "No, don't panic. It's just poison immunity, advanced. The card set I prepared can still deal with it. This is just a technical adjustment. Don't panic. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. As usual." Chapter 1780. In fact, at this time, the twin-maid sister, Miss Tina, who was active in the chessboard as a servant, didn't panic at all. She suddenly understood that this might just be an action used by Master Wally to paralyze his opponent. As a maid in the castle and a servant of Master Wally, she and Tiff had participated in the game more than once. They had seen too many people enter the game with the confidence of winning. "Tina, do you remember the young master of the Bohemian family 20 years ago? What do you want to say, Tiff?" What Tiff wants to say is that 20 years ago, the young master of the Bohemian family claimed to be the illegitimate son of the goddess of luck. He had been blessed with incredible luck since he was born until he came to Master Wally with his head held high. Tina remembered something. Indeed, that was a noble young master with strange luck. Yes, the young master of the Bohemian family went all the way and gained a lot. In the end, he even gathered one of the most powerful card combinations, but he didn't expect to be defeated by Mr. Wally in the end. Yes, the young master of the Bohemian family didn't expect that his luck on the chessboard had always been designed by Master Wally. When he thought he had everything, he was defeated by Master Wally. Ah, Mr. Wally is really bad. Don't say it out loud. Tina nodded silently, and then her mood became a lot more relaxed. Perhaps the servant with a sword in his hand was just another young master of the Bohemian family. In the chessboard space inside the Roaring Forest, since they didn't give a lot of action points to Miss Maid, they didn't go too deep into the forest at this time. It was about the middle area, not far from the edge of the forest. However, for a secret place like this, the monsters that appeared in it were generally much more dangerous than the monsters outside the map. If they didn't move in time and just stayed in the same place, monsters would continue to appear. For example, right now, a dozen giant spider demons were hanging down from an ancient tree. This may be a tough battle, the twin sister thought. Then, she realized that her worries were unnecessary. When the boss Luo saw so many spiders, it changed its habit of using its sword and raised its hand. In an instant, one after another, huge fireballs suddenly appeared above their heads. Then, like a bull that had been released from its cage, the fireballs charged towards the falling spiders. Yes, it was a collision. The fireball was so huge that when it was shot out, it gave Tina a shocking feeling. In the blink of an eye, the seemingly powerful spiders that would bring about a tough battle were roasted into charcoal, just like that. You're not a swordsman or something like that? The twin maids asked subconsciously. Yes, that's right. I'm a knight. Boss Luo turned around and explained briefly. Then you seem to be making fireballs just now? The maid thought that maybe she had seen wrongly. The fireball seemed to be so powerful that it could burn her to death, even if it was placed outside the chessboard. Since when could a servant inside the chessboard obtain such a terrifying skill? Yes, can a knight make fireballs? Boss Luo couldn't help but ask curiously. What he meant was, can a warrior use magic? No, it's not that you can't. The maid forced a smile and explained, it's just that it's rare, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Boss Luo nodded, and then said, but I only have this fireball magic skill at the moment. It seems that the attack method is relatively simple. The servant girl chuckled. That's it. That's the annoying face of a European. That's the face of the noble son of the Bohemian family. That's right, that's right. I'm almost certain that he's another Bohemian nobleman. Perhaps the fact that he's able to maintain this joy of success until his final defeat is the greatest protection his luck has given him. Is your usual luck as good as this? The maid, who had already figured out the general situation, relaxed a lot at this time. When she talked, she seemed to be more natural. The gift of the potion was like a pebble thrown into a calm lake, causing ripples. However, the ripples were soon erased by the original tranquility of the lake. In the end, the authority that the owner of the castle had accumulated over the years was more deeply rooted in the hearts of the maids. That's hard to say. Boss Luo shook his head at this time. In the first 20 years of my life, my luck was not very good. There were also times when I felt desperate. The maid blinked at this time. A cheerful person like you also has times when you feel desperate. Do you think I'm cheerful now? Luocchio said with a smile. Tina nodded, isn't it? Luocchio smiled again. Miss Tina thinks I'm cheerful. I think my heart is full of joy now. The maid laughed at this time. Do you usually talk to other women like this? Boss Luo couldn't help but ask curiously. What do you mean, Miss Tina? All kinds of things. The maid shook her head at this time, and then said softly with seductive eyes, when you say you're happy in your heart, it may easily cause misunderstandings. Like should be a very simple emotion. Luocchio thought for a while and said, the food you like to eat, the places you like to go, the books you like to read. Even like because it can bring joy to others. It doesn't have to be the kind of love between men and women, but for men and women in the world. The maid suddenly approached Luocchio at this time. She slightly raised her head and exhaled. It's very different. Boss Luo said indifferently. I think, Miss Tina, even if you're happy in your heart, what you like is not the so-called love between men and women in the world. You're really an interesting person. Tina shook her head and said, let me give you a suggestion. Mr. Varley has also arranged his servants to enter the roaring forest. Don't choose to fight with him. Even if you choose to submit, Mr. Varley still has his enemies. Before the game started, Mr. Varley already had an opponent that he wanted to fight. Who is this enemy? The maid stepped back at this time with a playful smile. Even if I'm happy in my heart now, it doesn't mean I'll tell you more. The suggestion has been given. Then, the matter of the potion being given to her was written off. The twin maids thought in their hearts. Just like that, the last ripple in their hearts finally disappeared. She walked to those dead spiders to see if there was anything dropped. Her footsteps became lighter. But at this moment, the maid's light footsteps suddenly stopped. This was because a figure was slowly walking out of the forest where the spider corpses were located, which had also been burnt to a crisp. It seems that a fierce battle has just happened here. Then, I'm very happy to see you here, beautiful Miss Tina. The person who walked out slowly was wearing a white doctor's robe. He was about 30 years old and full of masculine charm. He looked like a gentle scholar. Obviously, he was the family doctor of the castle, Gores. Doctor. The maid's eyes suddenly flashed a touch of unnaturalness at this time, and she slightly opened her mouth. Although Tina was surprised by the appearance of Dr. Gores, she wasn't too surprised because she got the news from her master, Tiff, that Chef Nelson had started to take action. If there was no accident, they would definitely meet in the roaring forest. The twin maids once said that they were born as conjoined twins, and it was because of Dr. Gores' hands that they were separated and had the freedom to move like normal people. Boss Luo looked at Dr. Gores at this time. It seems that you get along very well. Dr. Gores also looked at Luaccio at this time. He continued to walk out until he got closer and then smiled. The time in the chessboard is delayed to a certain extent. Here, time is slower than outside, so before the master makes a response, we will have some time to talk. This is a little bit of freedom between the servant and the servant. Thank you for your reminder, Mr. Gores. Boss Luo smiled and nodded. Maybe I will become your enemy in the next second. Dr. Gores waved his hand and said, So there is no need to thank me. Let me ask you, have you ever played this kind of game? First time. Boss Luo said bluntly. Dr. Gores continued, Why did you come to this castle? I don't think many people would believe the previous reason except for the ghoul bodyguards who brought you here. Trust me, the ghoul bodyguard's intelligence is limited to a certain extent. I know this very well because they were modified by me. Although the smell on your bodies is no different from that of ordinary people, you clearly don't have the reaction that ordinary people should have. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, Probably because I can't sit still and like to walk around. I think this castle is somewhat interesting, so I want to come and have a look. There is no special reason, and I don't intend to get anything from here. Of course, if I can get something, or it can be said to be an unexpected surprise, it is also good. Dr. Gores pondered slightly at this time, and said after a while, How sure are you to win? I mean, knock down Mr. Varley's servant. Miss Tina and I haven't met Mr. Varley's servant yet. Boss Luo said casually, How can you judge if you haven't met Mr. Varley's servant yet? Mr. Gores shook his head and immediately chuckled. A small dagger suddenly slipped from his sleeve and was held in his palm. Then, let me judge how to, during the delay time before the masters react. Mr. Gores, Miss Maid couldn't help but feel anxious at this time. When she saw Mr. Gerals take out the dagger, Miss Maid was stunned. I know what to do. Mr. Gores responded without looking back. Don't worry. I won't kill you. No. Miss Tina was about to say something. At this time, Dr. Gores rushed to Luaccio with a ghostly speed. The dagger in his hand seemed to be able to dance out a brilliant silver flower. It was a very fierce attack, and it was very sudden. Then, there was no more then. Dr. Girth, who was very fast and had a tricky angle of attack, was very confident. However, the moment he finished his words and made his move, he flew away from the servant girl and swept past her. He suddenly hit the scorched forest and broke several tree trunks that turned into charcoal before he stopped. At this time, Tina hurriedly ran to the place where Dr. Gores fell and pulled him up from the ground. Dr. Gores looked miserable at this time. A lot of equipment fell from his body, armors, wristbands, and even shoes. And these equipment lost their original luster at this time. There were many cracks on it, as if it would break with a touch of wine. Even the dagger that the doctor took out to attack at the beginning was now only left with the handle. Dr. Gores was stunned at this time. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, he said with a trembling voice, Why didn't you remind me? I wanted to say it. Miss Tina smiled bitterly at this time. I wanted to remind you to be careful, but doctor, are you okay? What do you think? Dr. Gores smiled bitterly at this time. My HP is only left with 30 points. This is under the condition that all my armors offset the damage. Tina, Where did you pick up such a perverted follower? Miss Maid couldn't help but smile bitterly at this time. I think I was picked up by him. You should use this first, or you will become more dangerous in the next round of HP reduction. As she spoke, the maid hurriedly took out the bottle of very, very large potion. But this time, Boss Luo had already walked over and said, "Use this." With that, Boss Luo took out another bottle of potion and put it in front of Dr. Gores. Miss Maid opened her mouth at this time. After seeing the bottle of very, very big potion, she couldn't help but be surprised. "You have more?" "Yes." Boss Luo nodded at this time. "There are some more here." With that, Boss Luo reached into the bag and took out 6 or 7 bottles with one hand. One of the bottles even had a slight golden light. How could he say that there were only a few? Wasn't it said that the drop rate of HP recovery items in the board game was so low that it made one's hair stand on end? The golden bottle seemed to be the abbreviated "one more life potion" that instantly restored all HP. Dr. Gores didn't care about anything else, but when he saw the potion, he immediately opened it and drank it. His face suddenly recovered, and then he stood up. "Come, let's team up," Dr. Gores said directly without thinking. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS 6784. Chapter 1781. In the banquet hall of the castle, golden words slowly appeared on the chessboard. "This is a great meeting, an alliance between the young hero and the old mage. The old mage with wisdom brought by age will guide the hero on the path of light." Being caught off guard, Varley was startled by the description. He subconsciously looked at the head chef of his castle. If he remembered correctly, or if he guessed wrongly, the head chef should have understood the meaning of his gaze and was about to have a duel with the master who instigated the twin maids to betray him not long ago. However, Mr. Varley, who had made technical adjustments for the possible situation, was quite calm at this time, at least on the surface. "Oh, Mr. Nelson, you seem to have found a new way to play?" Mr. Varley smiled and looked at Mr. Nelson, who was the head chef of the castle, slowly walked to his new team. It was Miss Maid's team. "We hope to give you a big surprise." Chef Nelson said seriously, "Mr. Varley, this is still a perfect day for you. I'm looking forward to it." Mr. Varley waved his hand and immediately looked at Yu Yi with a smile. "This is really a chess game full of unknowns. I can't help but think, if my servant meets your servant, will we become a team?" Mr. Varley emphasized the syllable of team. He smiled slightly and immediately cast 2 action points. At this time, his servant had entered the roaring forest from another direction. However, Mr. Varley didn't use the 2 action points to directly approach Miss Maid, Tiff, and Chef Nelson's team. Instead, he moved 2 squares to the left. At this time, it was the end of a round of casting. In fact, every round would end with Mr. Varley's casting. Then it was the HP reduction. If one's luck wasn't too bad, they could basically survive this round of HP reduction. Before the new round of casting, the masters began to draw the function cards from the box again. Mr. Varley put his palm on the box and directly grabbed a function card. He smiled faintly and placed the new function card in the preparation area, ending all his rounds. I finally gathered the deck of Invincible. At this time, the masters also took out the function cards accordingly. Basically, all the function cards were covered. This game brought the biggest variable, except for one. That was Mr. Snakel's partner, Blackhound's preparation area. In this preparation area, there were also many function cards, but a portion of the function cards were directly exposed, while a portion of them were carelessly covered. This obviously wasn't a battle tactic, it was just Blackhound randomly placing the cards. But most of the exposed function cards almost completely exposed Mr. Sneeve's background. He was like an opponent who had shown his cards right at the start of the game. He was probably the most easily overlooked person who had almost no chance of winning. A new round of throws began, and it was still Miss Gong Lina's throw. She had not moved for several rounds, and her action point had been saved. The betting spot this time was 6 o'clock. Miss Gong Lina's servant, Tang Tianlin, still did not move. This action point was automatically included in the next round's action point. "Oh, It seems that my sister's servant has really encountered a very troublesome matter. After several rounds, it still hasn't been solved. Has it resumed its action point? Yes. Miss Gong Lin sighed with a pitiful and weak face. It seems that the servant I found is not so good. I'm also very anxious. With that, Miss Gong Lin still casually threw the golden dice in front of the next player. Yu Yi. Miss Gong Lin didn't even intend to look at it at this time. She probably knew that this woman must have picked up the dice with a handkerchief covering her hand. She even rolled her eyes in her heart. But this time, Miss Maid threw away the handkerchief in her hand. Miss Gong Lin couldn't help but open her mouth, thinking that this woman had changed her personality. But soon, after throwing away the handkerchief, Miss Maid immediately replaced it with a new handkerchief. It was still covering the action of picking up the dice. She even replaced the handkerchief with a new one. Huh. This was the sound of nails clashing against nails. It came from Miss Gong Lin's nails. She did not expect to be despised to this extent. The eldest daughter of the Tsimas family could not help but sharpen her gaze. Miss Maid just smiled at this time. Miss, I hope you don't misunderstand. I'm just a little bit of a neat freak. I don't like to touch things that have been touched by too many people. That's all. The eldest daughter of the Simasai family only gave him a courteous glance and then became quiet. Then, on the chessboard, there was a group of 3 servants, and they began to move forward again under the instruction of Miss Maid. She doesn't like to touch things that have been touched by too many people. Did she really say that? During the process of moving forward, Dr. Gores kept talking with Chef Nelson as the master. Yes, I heard it with my own ears. You didn't see Miss Gong Lin's face. It was quite wonderful. Chef Nelson thought in his mind. You don't like to touch things that have been touched by too many people. Are you talking about the dice that have been touched by too many people? Or are you talking about the big miss that has been touched by too many people? Dr. Gillis' voice sounded beside the chef's ears with a hint of a smirk. Oh my God, I think it's probably the latter. Gores, you damn guy, you're so quick-witted. That lascivious Gong Lin. How could I forget about eldest Mrs. Affairs in the streets? That's why I'm the doctor and you're the chef. The family doctor of the castle now answered seriously. Bulsh asterisk T. While chatting, they suddenly began to quarrel with each other. The reason why they had such a leisurely relationship was that after forming a team, the team leader had the right to act. At this time, Chef Nelson and the maid Tiff were in a completely subservient, useless state. Since they had more people in the team to begin with, not only did they have to act together, but they also only had one chance to draw function cards. As for the reduction of HP, it was also the same. It could be said that they were bound together for good or ill. After all, the time in the chessboard space was delayed compared to the time outside. Or it could be said that the ratio between the two sides was different. Taking advantage of this time, Tina quietly came to Dr. Gore's side. She glanced at the temporary team leader boss Luo, who was opening a path with his sword as if he was cutting tofu, and quickly asked in a low voice, Doctor, is this Mr. Varley's idea? Dr. Gores immediately interrupted the conversation with Nelson and looked at the conjoined twins' sister curiously. The maid's voice was now lower. First give and then take. After the opponent's confidence is inflated, he will destroy all the opponent's hope with a thunderous blow, and then he will fall into the abyss of despair and gain pleasure. Isn't this Mr. Varley's usual style? Yes and no, Dr. Gores said at this time with a faint smile, but this time maybe we can really give this master a big surprise. You can wait for it for the time being. The maid tilted her head in confusion. Dr. Gores walked quickly to the temporary team leader with a ruffian smile at this time. The maid Tina couldn't help but feel more confused. Mr. Luo. When they formed the team, both sides had introduced each other, so Mr. Gores called him this at this time. Mr. Gores, is there anything I can help you with? No, I'm just curious. What's the use of this slate? Dr. Gores looked at the slate in Boss Luo's hand at this time. It was said that the light from this slate led them to the roaring forest. I don't know, Luochio said casually. It's just that since it led us like this, I'm going to follow it and have a look. Dr. Gores curiously said, Aren't you afraid that it may be a trap? Oh, although you are now the leader of the servant team, and your master is the leader of the master team. According to the rules, we can only follow orders, but I think it's understandable to worry about your future and ask more, right? There should be more than one slate. Luocio thought for a while and said, "What's the specific use of it? Maybe I can only wait until the collection is completed to really understand it. As for the danger, Dr. Gores, you can take these first." Boss Luo casually gave out a few bottles of health recovery potions. There were 4 or 5 of them. Dr. Gores couldn't help but open his mouth at this time. "You don't need so many, and you only took out 5 or 6 potions before. Maybe it's not a problem to give me one first." "It's okay." Luocio smiled and said, "I still have some. These were dropped by the monsters I just killed." "So they dropped just now?" "Yes." Luocio nodded. "The drop rate of potions in this forest is probably much higher than outside. Look, there's another one." He pointed at the body of slime-like monster that he had just cut off when the doctor arrived. It was a jelly-like monster that looked like a slime. "What's the purpose of you and your companions coming to the castle?" After a moment of silence, Dr. Gores suddenly asked. He had actually asked this question at the beginning, but he didn't get the answer, or he didn't get any of the answers he imagined. "Mr. Gores, I have already answered this question, and the answer is the same." Silence again. Dr. Gores suddenly sighed. "In Roaring Forest, there is an item that Mr. Varley must get. This is related to whether the final victory will be decided. If you can find it here before Mr. Varley, I will also tell you something deeper about this chessboard." "Deeper?" Dr. Gores nodded. "Don't you think it's magical? About this chessboard and its various incredible abilities." "It is indeed a very interesting chessboard." Luocio nodded. Dr. Gores said again at this time, "Let me tell you another piece of information. The harvest in this chessboard can be taken out. Of course, only the servants who survive can." "Oh." Boss Luo was a little surprised. "This sounds more magical." Dr. Gores said seriously, "Indeed, the interior of the chessboard can produce a lot of things that can't be found outside. Of course, it is impossible to take away too much at one time. There is a limit in this regard. At most, you can take away 2 selected things at a time. In addition, when you're a servant in the chessboard, you can also bring out the profession and ability you obtained, but it must be under the premise that your own ability is lower than the ability of the profession in the chessboard. Then the ability of the profession in the chessboard can cover your original ability." Luocio thought for a while and said, "Mr. Gores, you seem to be from Mr. Varley's castle." "I'm just a family doctor." Mr. Gores smiled at this time. "I'm not a servant. I'm just a hired doctor. I can resign at any time." "It seems that Mr. Varley must be working hard." Boss Luo smiled at this time. Dr. Gores shrugged and said, "Humans will live for benefits. Vampires are naturally the same. I'm not a noble from any clan, and I don't have a noble bloodline. If I want a better quality of life in the future, I naturally have to know how to choose and consider for myself. Perhaps you could consider my words. What if I don't get the item hidden in the Roaring Forest?" Luocio said indifferently, "That can only mean one thing." Dr. Gores suddenly said very seriously. Luocio couldn't help but ask curiously, "What does it mean?" Dr. Gores smiled and said, "That proves that my luck today is really bad. I believe." Boss Luo said, "A kind person won't have bad luck, as long as he is a kind person." "What did you talk to him about?" Tina came up at this time with a face full of doubts. She came up after Dr. Gores and the temporary captain finished their conversation. In fact, she didn't feel strange about Dr. Gores' appearance. It must be Mr. Varley's secret instruction. Basically, every time this kind of game was held, Mr. Varley would arrange several of his people to participate in the game as helpers to eliminate those who might pose a threat. But Tina didn't expect that Dr. Gores would surrender so easily this time, although the temporary captain's ability was really just some irrelevant topics. Dr. Gores shook his head at this time, and he probably warned me about one thing. "What thing?" the doctor said with a strange expression. "Probably. It means to be a person." Chapter 1782. The room behind the metal door at the end of the passage with the Batman statues suddenly lit up with a strange, dark green light. In the light, Miss Gonglina's coachman, Zamas, was approaching something step by step. He seemed to have lost all his senses. Idiot! Wake up! At this moment, a tingling feeling suddenly appeared on Zama's cheek. He couldn't help but shiver and wake up with a start. What is this? Zama's, who was shocked, instinctively took a few steps back. Then, he looked in front of him with cold sweat. The thing in front of him had attracted all his attention. At the same time, he also found a reason for the wound on his cheek. There was a kitchen knife on the ground, and there was even a small trace of blood on the blade. It was this kitchen knife that had attacked him and made him wake up. In an instant, Zama's figured out the cause and effect and faced up to an incredible thing. That was the kitchen knife he had picked up on the ground before was alive. God, he even saw eyes on the blade of the kitchen knife. It turned out to be a kind of creature that looked like a kitchen knife. Zama's even felt that this must be an illusion that he had seen. It was just like the thing in this secret room that had attracted all his attention from the beginning. It was a plant with half a human body. It was planted in a huge container, rooted in the dark red soil. The upper half of its body was shockingly a peerlessly beautiful female body. Even, why does it look so similar to Miss Gonglina? Zama's murmured at this time. He didn't even dare to look into the eyes of the half-human, half-plant creature. Its eyes were open, but there was no focus. It looked empty, but there was a strange magic that made people lose themselves in it. Rather than saying that it was a half-human, half-plant creature, it was better to say that the mysterious woman had become the stamen, hiding in the flower bud of this huge plant. Brother, now is not the time to be in a daze. Look behind you. At this time, Zama's heard the sound of kitchen knife again. This made him jump in fright. He turned around and saw that there were already many Batman statues behind him. Seeing that he was about to be attacked by these Batman statues, Zama's anxiously picked up the kitchen knife on the ground. This was the only weapon he could find. Wait, idiot, if you ask me to chop a rock, I will collapse. My blade will curl up. Who cares? At this time, Zama's gritted his teeth. In the end, it was his survival instinct that suppressed the strangeness of the kitchen knife that could speak and had eyes. He waved the kitchen knife to meet the attack. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm a meat cleaver, not a bone cleaver. Sparks flew everywhere. Kitchen knife screams kept ringing out, but Zama's didn't have time to care about that. Brandishing the kitchen knife to meet the attack, he used all his skills to open up a bloody path. Oh, bro, not bad. Seeing that the exit was right in front of them and they were about to escape danger, Mr. Kitchen Knife immediately stopped screaming and gave a fair evaluation. Zama's didn't have time to pay attention to this. With a flash, he chopped down a Batman statue that was blocking the entrance. A pair of huge bat wings suddenly spread out from his back, and he charged forward. But at this time, the floor of the secret room suddenly broke open, and then a thick and long root shot out like lightning. It directly wrapped around Zama's legs and pulled him back. He fell to the ground, shocked and angry. He quickly used the kitchen knife in his hand to cut the thick and long root. Not only did he not cut it open, but the rebound force almost made his hand numb. At this time, at the edge of the container where the half-human, half-plant creature was, more than a dozen similar roots broke out of the ground in an instant and quickly crawled toward Zama's. He looked at all of this in horror, but it was useless. In the end, the roots wrapped around his body and pulled him back little by little. Zama's hands, 10 fingers at this time, firmly grasped the floor, leaving 10 long claw marks. At the same time, the metal door of the secret room began to close little by little. At this moment, the half-human, half-plant creature in the container, its roots suddenly split open, and what opened was a mouth full of sharp and dense teeth. Miss Gonglina! Miss Gonglina! Zama's voice came to an abrupt stop amidst his desperate and frightened shout. At this time, the kitchen knife directly broke free from Zama's hands. The moment it fell to the ground, the kitchen knife even pierced the living map in Zama's hands. Just like this, the living map hung directly on the edge of his knife. Then, Mr. Kitchen Knife jumped, wanting to dash out of the secret room. Oh, I'm a sharp kitchen knife. I don't have any feelings. Unexpectedly, the roots on the ground suddenly waved toward the kitchen knife. In great shock, The kitchen knife did not have time to think and jumped up with all his strength. But the speed at which the root waved was faster than the kitchen knife. Pah! Its body was directly hit, and then it began to crazily spin. In the end, it was slapped toward the metal door. At the moment when the metal door was about to close, it was forcefully inserted into the floor. Bang! The metal door closed, but because Mr. Kitchen Knife was stuck in the gap of the door, a finger-wide crack was left on the metal door. Puff! Another soft sound was heard. Zamas, who had been completely entangled by the roots, had his body broken due to the contraction of the roots, blood splashing everywhere. A root was slowly extending toward the kitchen knife, or rather, it was stuck in the gap of the metal door because of it. At this time, the kitchen knife seemed to have seen the eyes of the strange half-human, half-plant creature. It seemed to move strangely, and its roots had directly reached the gap of the door. It was actually sealed here. Seeing this, the kitchen knife suddenly understood. Maybe it and Zamas had unintentionally released something that should not have been released. The roaring forest covered a large area. Even for a chessboard, the number of squares in the forest was still not small. Ever since he successfully transformed in the wolf's lair, relying on the action points he had accumulated in a few rounds to reach the roaring forest, Mr. Snakel had been circling around the roaring forest for a few rounds. It seemed that he was looking for something. However, the monsters in the roaring forest were obviously much more powerful than those in the outside area. Even the success rate of avoiding them was greatly reduced. It was reasonable to say that for Mr. Sneeve, not only would his action point decrease by 1 every round, but his HP would also decrease by 1 every round. If this continued, his HP would become very dangerous, but it was a miracle that he could hold on until now. But if one could see Mr. Sneeve's action in the chessboard space, they would be able to get the answer to his tenacity. His HP was actually not as small as they imagined. Although it was not a huge amount, it was definitely in the range of a large amount. At this time, there were many small bags hanging on Mr. Sneeve's body. These small bags contained some medicine that he had made temporarily. Mr. Gardner was not a doctor, nor was he the so-called secret pharmacist. But he used to be a hunter. For hunters, they might not be able to master the advanced medical skills, but they were definitely proficient in the treatment of wounds, and even had the ability to find useful herbs in the forest. After becoming a servant in the chessboard space, all the power in the body would be emptied. Only through the game rules in the chessboard space could the servant be able to control the power again. However, knowledge was not limited by this rule. There is no doubt that the chessboard space was extremely dangerous for Mr. Sneeve, but at the same time, it was also a place rich in herbs for him. Mr. Sneeve was moving slowly at this time. His HP was recovering bit by bit at a very slow speed. Although it was really slow, about 10 seconds to recover 1 point, it was the effect of the medicine that he had made himself. Currently, his HP was 76 points. Mr. Sneeve slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Even if the next HP decrease was 6 points, under the rule of adding 1 point, he could still barely survive. Where is he hiding? He muttered to himself, and his eyes were eagerly looking for something in this huge forest. At this moment, whoosh, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Mr. Sneeve's body tensed up. He decisively rushed to the ground and then rolled his body. He saw a sharp arrow, at this time, had pierced his clothes and nailed a piece of cloth directly to the ground, if he had rolled a little slower. But even so, Mr. Sneeve still took a breath of cold air. You dodged a fatal attack. You received poison damage from the arrow. Your HP began to drop slowly. HP -2, -2, -2, you felt despair. I'm not desperate. Mr. Sneeve cursed in a low voice, then hurriedly got up and looked around nervously. At this time, a figure slowly walked out of the forest. His hands were holding a huge, dark longbow, and a new arrow was knocked on the longbow, pointing to the ground. He slowly walked over. Member A of the monitoring team, Carlyle. What a surprising reaction. But it's expected. After all, you have the rapid reaction card, Carlyle said indifferently. I just don't know if you can dodge the next arrow. You're Wally's follower? Mr. Sneeve gritted his teeth and said, "Although I don't want to, this is indeed the truth." Carlyle shook his head with a trace of resentment on his face. "Although I don't know why he, as the owner of the castle, wants to deal with you, as the gardener of the castle, but don't blame me, because now I have no choice but to follow orders. If possible, I even hope that my next arrow can pierce the body of the owner of the castle." Raising the longbow and pulling the bowstring, Carlyle said angrily at this time, "My arrow is going to shoot at your shoulder." Mr. Snaff was startled, but he immediately reacted. His shoulders suddenly shrunk back, and the arrow flew past his skin by a hair's breadth. Although the arrow didn't hit him, it also increased the degree of poison damage. In great shock, Mr. Sneeve quickly opened a few bags and swallowed the mountain herbs he made himself. "You're really a lucky guy." Carlyle sneered at this time and said, "However, I will never give you a chance to leave my range of action. After all, my range of action is limited to this square, and your master's throw point is before mine. Therefore, I will kill you before your master can cast his arrow. This arrow of mine will pierce through your heart." Mr. Sneeve couldn't help rolling like an old donkey again to avoid the arrow that was shot at his heart. He got up, grabbed a handful of soil, at the same time mixed some herbal powder that he picked on the road and scattered it. Magically, the mixture of soil and powder began to produce a large amount of grayish-white smoke that shrouded the surroundings. When the smoke dispersed, the arrow that Cadillac shot had only hit a piece of dead wood. Mr. Snakel had already disappeared without a trace. Carlyle lowered the black longbow at this time. At the same time, a voice sounded in his ears. "You let him escape." This was obviously the voice of Mr. Varley as the master. It was quite calm. His reaction is very fast, as if he can predict danger. Carlyle said coldly at this time, "In addition, you didn't tell me that he has the substitute ability. I shot a piece of deadwood." "Well, in the preparation area, there are a few function cards that haven't been opened." Mr. Varley's voice paused, and then he said indifferently, "In the card box, there is indeed a function card with substitute ability. It doesn't matter, he can't escape next time. You said that as long as I win this game for you, you will release Mr. COR and my companions." Carlyle gritted his teeth at this time. "You better not lie to me. Don't think about the possibility of whether I lie to you or not." Mr. Varley smiled faintly. "I just gave you a reason to convince yourself and then serve me. Perhaps you want to survive from me more than you think." Carlyle was silent. As a servant, although he couldn't disobey Varley's battle order, he had to take the initiative to fight, so he could fight passively. "Let's move forward." Mr. Varley said indifferently, "Sneeve is not the main one. You just block my way to my destination, that's all." Carlyle took back the longbow silently. "Hey, there seems to be someone in front." Miss Maid pointed at this time. In the dense forest, under an ancient tree in front of them, there was a figure lying on top of the densely packed roots of the tree. There was even an arrow stuck in the person's back. Chapter 1783. When he got closer, he realized that the person who had fallen on the tree root was a woman. She was wearing clothes woven from tree vines, leaves, and other fibers. She had light green hair, slightly pointed ears, and a delicate face. She looks like the legendary forest elf. Tina, the maid, sighed after taking a look at it. "This doesn't look like the beauty of the human world. But, other than us, are there any other servants who entered this place? Tiff told me that after we came in, only Mr. Snape followed us in. She shouldn't be a servant." Dr. Gores thought for a while and said, "She should be a creature in the chessboard space. This is probably the trigger point of a certain plot. If you have played the game, you should know that she is the so-called plot character. In that case, if we save her, it will bring us something, right?" The maid nodded. After thinking for a while, she planned to unscrew a health potion and feed it to the unconscious elf-like woman. Anyway, this potion was not rare anymore. She had 5 of them with her at the moment. These were the leftovers that she picked up when she followed the temporary captain. "No need." But Mr. Gores shook his head and said, "This potion has no effect on the creatures in the chessboard. They can only be treated by normal means, or The medicine made by the creatures in the chessboard will work on them. There are no herbs nearby to stop the bleeding. Well, Tina, help me hold her. After the maid helped the injured woman sit up, Dr. Gores quickly took out a dagger and cut off the arrow on the woman's back. Then, he used a cloth to wrap the woman's body. You guys stay here. I'll look around to see if there's anything useful. Dr. Gores said quickly. She needs to stop the bleeding and take out the arrow. I hope she can hold on until I come back. At the same time, Boss Luo also received the message from the chessboard space after the maid, as the master made some actions. You, the adventurer team, encountered an injured, mysterious woman in the forest. You chose to save him. In other words, before the treatment was completed, all points would stop until this matter was over. Soon, Dr. Gores returned again. This time, he was holding a few plants that looked like they had just been pulled out. He also brought back some water. If you don't mind, can you do me a favor? He looked directly at Boss Luo and asked, Go ahead. Can I trouble you to make a fireball? I heard from Tina that you can release fireballs. Dr. Gores said directly, I'm going to pull out the arrowhead for her, but I only have a dagger with me. At least I need to disinfect it. Then, a fireball with a diameter of about 1 meter was formed. Dr. Gores couldn't help but twitch his mouth slightly. Boss Luo said that this was the smallest fireball he could make. Otherwise, without any tools to start a fire, they would probably have to drill wood to start a fire. In short, Dr. Gores was smart enough to successfully disinfect the dagger before the blade melted. He went to the back of the heavily injured woman and cut open a small piece of her clothes. Then, he stretched out his finger and touched her wound. Then, he put his finger into his mouth and sucked on it. Then, as if he had regained some energy, he shook his head and began to take out the arrowhead. He looked like he was concentrating. Boss Luo looked at him and asked curiously, After becoming a servant, do you still have the urge to suck blood? Not yet. The maid shook her head. Then she couldn't help but take a look. Then she said with uncertainty, Maybe. Yes. She couldn't help being stunned. No matter if it was her or Dr. Girth, or even all the people in the castle who had contacted Luo Chio and Mississippi Maid, they had never told them that there was a group of vampires in the castle. How did he know? Sure enough, as Dr. Gores said, if he was an ordinary person, he wouldn't know so much and be so calm. Soon, the arrowhead was removed from the seriously injured woman. Dr. Gores wiped his hands at this time and said with a look of pity, She is temporarily saved, if there is no wound infection or something like that. That's great. Boss Luo smiled and said, I think if we didn't meet Mr. Gores, even if we met her, we might not be able to save her. It's just a coincidence. Dr. Gores shook his head, but he suddenly felt a little uncertain. Coincidentally, he was really a doctor. Coincidentally, there was a seriously injured woman who needed the ability of a doctor to save. Why did it feel like it was arranged? Dr. Gores couldn't help, but secretly shook his head. This kind of coincidence was too unbelievable. It should be a real coincidence. How could it be so deliberate? You successfully saved a life that was about to disappear. But the appearance of the injured woman was too strange, so you decided to investigate carefully. After discussion, you felt that this woman might live in the forest, so you planned to look for her relatives in the forest. You decided to act separately, leaving one person to take care of the injured woman. This was obviously not the style of Miss Servant Girl as the master. It could only be said that the chessboard space guided this incident or the direction of the plot. I'll stay. Dr. Gores thought at this time and said, Anyway, I'm a doctor, so I'm more suitable to take care of patients. Well, then I'll go there and have a look. Tina nodded, pointing in a direction and walking quickly. She just wanted to finish this plot quickly. As for Boss Luo, at this time, he gently stood the big sword and then fell down naturally with it. It seems that you really like to let fate make decisions for you. Dr. Gores couldn't help but open his mouth. He had seen this temporary captain's way of choosing the path several times when they encountered a fork in the road. It's more accurate this way. Luochio smiled at this time. After all, sometimes there will be errors. Why do I feel that this way of choosing the path is more prone to errors? The doctor looked at the temporary captain with a strange expression. At this time, he really followed the direction where big treasure Holy light, Sword's hilt fell. He couldn't help shaking his head. You can also find clues in this way. I believe that the possibility of Wally kneeling in front of you is more than 50%. In the banquet hall of the ancient castle. At this time, a halo suddenly appeared on the chessboard. The halo directly encircled a small part of roaring forest at this time. At the same time, the golden smoke text began to float. The adventure team has obtained the right to move freely. The range of activity can't exceed the limited range. The activity time is 3 rounds. Within 3 rounds, the team master temporarily loses the choice of action points, but keeps the life reduction roll and the function card draw. It seems that you seem to have encountered something important. Mr. Wally glanced at it at this time. Generally, when encountering this kind of situation, there will always be a very good harvest. Of course, it will also be accompanied by unimaginable danger. As Mr. Wally said, he let his servant also enter the grid of the halo. It only prohibited the servant of Miss Maid's team from leaving, but it did not restrict other servants from entering. In fact, it was difficult to determine the direction of the other servant's movement in the chessboard space. But for the master outside the chessboard, the position of the other servant was already clear from the beginning. Mr. Wally let his servant enter the range of the halo, seemed to be to catch up with Mr. Sneeve. At this time, the range of the halo included the grid where Mr. Sneeve was at this time. But his heart was definitely not as calm as it seemed. How could this be? This was clearly what would happen after the plot was triggered. Sister, it's your turn. Mr. Wally threw the die in front of Miss Gonglina at this time and smiled. I think your servant can only stay in place for this round. It seems to be the case. Miss Gonglina sighed helplessly, picked up the die, and threw it casually. Indeed, as a servant, Tang Tianlin did not move. Sister, you have to be careful. Mr. Wally smiled and said, if you can't move, it means that there is no gain. If this continues, I don't know how many times your servant can withstand the damage. That's true. Miss Gonglina sighed at this time. I don't know how you plan to punish me if I lose. I hope I won't see the punishment wheel in front of you. Mr. Wally smiled casually, then next. Because of the temporary prohibition of movement in the 3 rounds, the die was directly handed to Black Hound at this time. Miss Gonglina was finally relieved. She glanced at the handkerchiefs that were thrown away. Finally, she did not need to add another one for this round. Perhaps after this game was over, she would keep these handkerchiefs and use them to block the mouth of this hateful woman. That would be quite a pleasant thing. Black Hound rolled and pushed the die with its paw. The die began to rotate slowly, but this time it turned out to be 1 action point. According to the rules, Mr. Sneeve could not move at all in this round and could only stay in the original place. Then it was Mr. Butler's turn. Nan Xiaonan, as a servant, had successfully entered the roaring forest. At the same time, on the chessboard, the servant cards in Miss Maid's team had been divided into 2 and moved in different directions. Mr. Wally narrowed his eyes and saw that the card representing the boss Luo was moving in the direction of Mr. Sneeve's position. Separated, in this case, Miss Maid was searching around carefully, trying to find traces of people living here. Judging from the clothes of the injured woman, she must have lived in the forest for a period of time, since she was wearing clothes made of the fibers of trees and leaves. Then there must be traces of life. Tina, I saw that Master Wally's servant also entered the circle of light. You're separated now. Tiff, do you mean that Master Wally intends to kill my current leader here? Tiff thinks it is very possible. This is a good thing, Tiff. The servant girl smiled and said, in this way, he will be killed, and his master will lose the right to vote. The position of team leader will automatically fall into the hands of Dr. Girth or me. In this way, we could choose to team up with Master Wally. Tiff, this is Master Wally's way to rescue us. It should be like this. We don't need to spin the punishment roulette. Tiff also laughed. It's a pity that your leader can't get out if he dies in the chessboard space. I haven't sucked his blood yet. Miss Maid Tina's brisk footsteps suddenly slowed down, and her expression was a little unnatural. Tina, what's going on? I feel that you seem to be a little unhappy. Are you worried about your leader servant? No. Miss Maid shook her head. I just found something. You don't need to lie to me. We are sisters. No, I really found something. Tina said quickly. I saw a house on a tree. It is very likely to be the place where the injured woman lives. I will go and have a look. A house on a tree? What house? Tina, don't go. Tina, it is like the one on the tree in front of our house when we were young. The house on a tree. Tina, don't go up. Tina. However, Tina, the maid who was in the chessboard space, seemed to be unable to hear her sister's voice at this moment. She climbed up the wooden ladder that was inserted into the trunk of the big tree with both of her hands. Raising her head, she climbed up bit by bit. Tina. Her sister's voice was still around Tina's ears. But at this time, she had climbed up and was just in front of the small door of the house on the tree. Tina opened the small wooden door of the tree house with both hands, and she subconsciously climbed into the tree house. Ring. Her vision turned white, and then she seemed to have entered a world of soft light. She saw a string of wind chimes hanging in the house, and at this moment, on the floor of the tree house, there was a pair of little twin girls lying on the ground, reading a fairy tale book together. The twin little girls' bodies were connected. All of a sudden, they lifted their heads and looked at Tina, smiling.